LoveLore Library. Chapter 158. Qin Yining could hear that the Sun Clan was still sighing in pain, so he just smiled. People's hearts were made of flesh. Qin Yining naturally knew that it was impossible for the Sun Clan to not have the slightest bit of pity for Qin Huaining. After all, she had been raised as her own daughter for more than 10 years. Although she was angry and disappointed, even if the child was wrong, the mother-daughter relationship could not be easily erased. Qin Yining didn't want to say much about this matter. Now that her father couldn't bear Qin Huaining and punished her, there was no need for her to trouble the people of Zhaoyun Agency. If Qin Huaining could play her part in the future, she would treat her as a stranger. If Qin Huaining provoked her again, she would not tolerate it. Seeing Qin Yining sitting on the side with her eyes down and letting Bing Tang apply medicine and bandage her hand without saying anything, Mother Jean was afraid that she would misunderstand the Sun Clan and cause a rift between mother and daughter, so she hurriedly said, "Madam, don't worry. The Marquis naturally has his own principles. Besides, Huaining really went too far this time. Even if she is sent to the country estate to reflect on her mistakes for a period of time, it won't be considered a heavy punishment." The Sun Clan nodded, her expression full of sorrow. "I'm not worried about her. With her character, she will never let herself be at a disadvantage. I just feel that now that I have seen the true nature of so many people, I feel that I have lived for decades in vain. I never knew that there would be people in this world who would treat others like this. Even if not everyone has a kind heart, in the end, they won't have evil intentions." Qin Yining saw the Sun Clan sighing with emotion. Her eyes were as confused as a child who couldn't figure things out. He couldn't help but sigh. In fact, his mother wasn't a bad person. It was just that she had been pampered for many years and had been protected too well. In addition, her family used to be tough and didn't give the old madam a chance to show her true nature. It's not a bad thing to be able to see these people and things clearly now, isn't it? Qin Yining held the Sun Clan's hand with his uninjured left hand. When the members of the Sun Clan thought of how Qin Yining had risked his life to protect them today, they were moved. They smiled and held Qin Yining's hand, nodding gently. "Miss, I've applied the ointment. Don't let it get wet for the next 2 days. After the scab comes off, apply the scar removal ointment that I specially made. I guarantee that your hand will be as good as new." Bing Tang smiled and put away the white porcelain medicine box. Qin Yining smiled and said, "Thank you very much." "You're welcome, Mississippi." Bing Tang retreated to the side with a smile. In the past, the members of the Sun Clan didn't like Qin Yining, so they also disliked the people around him. Now that they understood Qin Yining and hated the Chow family and the incapable ruler, the Sun Clan felt a sense of kinship when they looked at Bing Tang. In addition, Bing Tang had treated her several times, so the Sun Clan also became very gentle and polite to Bing Tang. "With Miss Tang by Sister Yi's side, I can rest assured. I also have to thank you for taking care of our Sister Yi." "Madam, what are you saying? It's this servant's duty to serve Mississippi." Bing Tang smiled and bowed. When the members of the Sun Clan heard her call herself a servant, they sighed. She was considered lucky. Although her family was destroyed, at least her mother and sister-in-law were still alive. She also had a husband that she could rely on and a daughter that was capable. Bing Tang was truly pitiful. Her family was gone, and as the daughter of a wealthy family, she still had to be a servant. Thinking of this, the members of the Sun Clan felt even more pity for Bing Tang. They took her hand and said, "In the future, you can stay by Sister Yi's side. The two of you can take care of each other. If you want to eat or use anything, just tell me. If you lack anything, you can also come directly to Mother Jean. In short, just treat this as your home." Bing Tang was somewhat flattered. To tell the truth, she secretly looked down on this idiotic madam. She only felt some sympathy for the fate of the Sun Clan. Now that the Sun Clan had come to their senses and were treating her so kindly, Bing-Tang immediately knew why. She smiled and politely agreed. Just as the atmosphere in the room was warm, the voice of a servant girl in the corridor came to their ears. The Marquis has returned. The curtain was lifted and Qin Huayuan entered. The members of the Sun Clan and Qin Yining both stood up and saluted in unison. Qin Huayuan waved his hand and said, "There's no need to be so formal at home." Qin Yining calculated the time and knew that Qin Huayuan should have gone to find Xiao Yuqing and settled the matter of the Titan before returning. After not sleeping last night, and after what happened in the morning, Qin Yining felt tired. Presumably, Qin Huayuan was even more tired. She smiled and said, "Daughter will take her leave first." The members of the Sun Clan smiled and nodded. She instructed Mother Jean to send them off, while she helped Qin Huayuan change his clothes. Qin Yining led Ji Yun and Bing Tang all the way to the Shuoran Pavilion. When they passed by the back garden, they heard a commotion and crying in front of the Chuehua gate not far away. Looking carefully, they saw that it was Xiao Yuqing and Qin Huaining. "Adoptive mother, I beg you, I don't want to go out. I'm not sick, I'm not infected. Adoptive mother, please tell father. As long as you say it, father will definitely listen." Qin Huaining knelt in front of Xiao Yuqing, crying pitifully. Xiao Yuqing's voice was very helpless. "Get up. You've done such a wrong thing. Even the Marquis has spoken. There's no room for anyone else to plead for leniency. I did it for adoptive mother." Qin Huaining didn't expect Xiao Yuqing to flatly refuse, so her tone was somewhat anxious. When Xiao Yuqing heard this, her beautiful face turned cold. She raised her eyebrows and said, "Miss Huaining, please be careful with your words. What do you mean by, for me? Could it be that I was the one who asked you to murder the old madam?" Qin Huaining realized that she had blurted out something and hurriedly tried to explain. Xiao Yuqing's patience had run out. She led her people past her and headed straight for the second door. Qin Huaining fell to the ground and helplessly looked at Xiao Yuqing's back. She covered her mouth and sobbed bitterly. Right now, she really regretted it so much that her intestines were about to turn green. If it wasn't for the fact that her plan wasn't thorough enough, she wouldn't have fallen to such a state. Suddenly, Qin Huaining felt a chill run down her spine, as if someone was using a knife to scrape the hair on her back. She suddenly turned around and saw Qin Yining leading Ji Yun and Bing Tang to the back garden. They were standing at the fork in the road that led to the Shuoran Pavilion. Qin Yining was dressed lightly, but her bright and beautiful face made her feel disgusted just by looking at her. She looked at her with a smile that wasn't a smile. Her mockery almost turned into a sharp blade that crushed what little self-esteem she had left. Qin Huaining's face suddenly turned red. Just as she was about to speak, Qin Yining had already turned around and left. Her cold glance was like a kind of charity to her. "Miss Huaining, please leave. Don't make things difficult for us servants." Mammy Qin had already become impatient from waiting on the side with her people. Qin Huaining's face had been swept to the ground. She hated that she couldn't just bang her head against the wall and die, but she forced herself to raise her chin and proudly lead her people out of the Chuehua gate. The people from Snow Pear Courtyard who had been sent out with her all had gloomy expressions on their faces. They spat at Qin Huaining's back several times. Qin Huaining heard it, but could only pretend not to know. At the same time, in Fengyi Palace, the Empress had dismissed the palace servants. She lowered her voice and asked Chao Guozhang, "Father, why did you suddenly enter the palace to see this Empress? Did something big happen at home?" Chao Guozhang said in a low voice, "It's not a big deal, but it's not a small matter either. I'm afraid that the matter between us and the Titan will be leaked." Chapter 159. Chao Guizhang looked around to make sure the palace doors were closed and no one was spying. Then he said in a low voice, "Has Nyang heard about the big fire in North Jushan Market?" The Empress shook her head blankly. With her temperament and position, if she didn't intentionally spy or someone else deliberately told her, how could a fire that seemed normal to the outside world reach her ears? Chao Guizhang then said, "Last night, the residence where we arranged for those people caught fire. The Water Dragon Bureau's people went to put out the fire, but the water sprayed out from the water wheel turned into oil. The fire grew bigger and bigger. Just as the 5 cities warden's office and the Water Dragon Bureau's people rushed to put out the fire, the people living in the residence ran out of the door and disappeared." Disappeared. The Empress's slightly hoarse and delicate voice was full of disbelief. This was clearly set up by someone. "Who is targeting our Chao family?" Chao Guizhang nodded and said, "The Titan princess was furious. This subject urgently investigated and interrogated everyone in the area who might have been in contact with the residents. In the end, I got some clues from Su Mao. A few days ago, the 4th young miss of the family Qin passed by here and said that she lost a gold bracelet inlaid with jade. It was picked up by someone in the residence and she asked Su Mao to help her search. Su Mao sternly refused. Other than the 4th young miss of the Qin family, there was no one else. That wild hussy of the family Qin." The Empress narrowed her eyes. "That wild hussy is not simple. She has a foxy appearance and charmed a barbarian of the Zhou dynasty. He even gave her the large Huichan garden." This Empress looked carefully. "That wild hussy looks very much like Qin Mang. Maybe she has as many wicked ideas as Qin Mang." Speaking of this, the Empress frowned and said, "Father, Qin Mang is not an easy person to deal with. This Empress has been by the Emperor's side for so long and hasn't found any useful information about Qin Mang from the Emperor. But my sister is so useless. She only thinks about love all day and can't find anything." Chao Guizhang saw that the Empress was going off topic, so he said, "It's good that your sister only treats Qin Mang wholeheartedly. Qin Mang is now my virtuous son-in-law. If we can grasp the relationship well, it will be a great help." Then why would his daughter be suspicious when she passed by that house? The Empress paused for a moment before reacting. "Father suspects that she is in contact with people from Dezhou. Is Prince Zhongshuan trying to trick us? That's possible, but we can't rule out the possibility that she was instructed by Qin Mang." The Empress sneered, "I don't care about other things, but this wild hussy dared to be disrespectful to me, so I will settle the score with her. It doesn't matter if she's helping her father or her lover, Ben Gong will make sure that she doesn't have the life to care about these things." That day, she dared to look down on this consort and even stood to the side to laugh at this consort. How many years has it been since this consort has suffered such vexation? How could this consort lose to a little girl? "Father, don't worry, Qin Yining's life is in this consort's hands." Seeing the Empress like this, Chao Guizhang didn't say anything and just smiled. After Chao Guizhang left, the Empress acted coquettishly in front of the Emperor that night. She said that she had been having nightmares for the past few days, and because she was worried about the health of her husband and her family, she wanted to go to Xiangu Temple to perform rituals and pray for her family. As she spoke, she even shed tears. When the Emperor saw her crying like a pear blossom in the rain, he couldn't help but feel distressed. "Little darling, don't cry. You're crying until my heart is broken. I'll give you whatever you want." The Emperor held the Empress' waist and swayed. He muttered to himself for a moment and said, "It's not a big deal to go to the ceremony. Prince Zhongshuan will return to the capital in a few days, leaving their envoys to continue handling the compensation and handover. Once Prince Zhongshuan leaves, there won't be any hard bones left. The handover will be easier to handle. When the time comes, I'll be free. I'll accompany you, okay?" The Empress pouted her red lips and tears were about to fall again. I'm naturally overjoyed. It's just that I've been anxious these past few days and haven't been able to sleep well. Look at the wrinkles at the corners of my eyes. If your Majesty is worried about me, you can arrange for someone to escort me there. I'll go to Lady Mother of the Chariot statue and kowtow a few times to feel at ease. Her white fingers slid across the Emperor's lapel, and then gradually moved downwards. When your Majesty is free, I'll accompany your Majesty to go again, okay? The Emperor's heart was about to melt from her coquettish behavior and her white hands constantly moving around. He immediately threw away his helmet and armor and agreed to whatever the Empress wanted. The next day, the Empress, under the escort of the Emperor's arranged guards, went to Xiangu Temple to see Fairy Lu. At the same time, Qin Yining was nestled on the soft couch in Shuoran Temple's reception pavilion. She was holding the soft and furry Airby with one hand and reading an account book with the other. Suddenly, there was the sound of hurried footsteps approaching from the corridor. In response to Miss, someone from the second gate has come to pass a message saying that Prince Zhongshuan's attendant is asking for an audience. Qin Yining was stunned. She handed the account book to Qiu Lu, who was now in charge of managing her finances, and carried Airby to the ground. Bing Tang and Ji Yun hurriedly followed and went straight to the reception pavilion in the outer courtyard. Just as they reached the door, they saw Huzi, who was wearing a dark blue outfit. So it's you. Qin Yining's bandaged hand reached down and played with Airby's drooping ear. Huzi hurriedly bowed to Qin Yining. His eyes moved from her injured hand to Bing Tang, and he grinned, "Potato Spirit, you're here too." Bing Tang's face turned red from Huzi's greeting, but she didn't want to be rude in front of her miss, so she rolled her eyes at him. Huzi rubbed his nose from the glare and cupped his hands. "Fourth miss, our Wang Ye's old injury has relapsed, causing the poison from the last time to act up again. Therefore, he specially instructed me to invite Bing Tang's miss to treat him." Qin Yining's heart skipped a beat. Pang Zhao's shoulder was pierced by an arrow in order to protect her. That day, his robe was stained with blood as he broke the arrow and fought again. The image of him standing in front of her and fighting against the Titan was still engraved in her mind. Being poisoned was not a small matter. Bing Tang's medical skills were good, and she was well educated. However, she was still too young to be able to handle Bing Tang. What if there was something wrong with her? Qin Yining frowned worriedly. Bing Tang's miss didn't care and curled her lips. Is Wang Ye's poison really acting up? Huzi's face couldn't help but turn red when Bing Tang's big round eyes stared at him. He grinned even more happily. Yes, it's acting up. Therefore, I'll have to trouble fourth miss to bring Bing Tang's miss to him. He put his palms together and begged. Qin Yining was confused by Huzi's behavior. She looked at Bing Tang inquiringly. Bing Tang glared at Huzi and said, "Miss, don't listen to his nonsense." Although Wang Yi suffered a lot of injuries during the years of war, the poison had been cured at that time. Now that he is talking nonsense about his poison acting up, there must be something fishy about it. Qin Yining nodded slightly when she heard this. But Huzi said, "Fourth young miss, in any case, seeing our prince's sincerity towards you, let's go." Qin Yining's face turned red. Pang Xiao had saved her several times. Even if the Sun clan was beheaded by the emperor, Pang Xiao did save her. In order to support her and boost her reputation, he didn't hesitate to offend people and gave her such a valuable house. This person was a little overbearing and never asked her what she liked. However, she owed him. "Forget it, I'll go with you." Qin Yining handed Airby to Ji Yun. "I'll go with Bing Tang. You go and tell my mother that I have something to do outside. You stay in Xingning Garden and take care of my mother. If Madame Dowager invites my mother, you can go with her. Don't make things difficult for her." Ji Yun smiled and nodded. Don't worry, Mississippi, she left with Airby in her arms. Chapter 160. The carriage sped along the road. The more Chin Yining looked around, the more he felt that something was amiss. Isn't this the way to Cloud Treading Inn? Why isn't Wang Yi in the guest house? That's right. Huzi smiled and said, if he wants to see an illness, it's not convenient for him to be in the guest house with so many people around. Besides, old dog Lian is there too. Qin Yining was annoyed at the thought of Lian Xingjie, that pervert. Luckily, Pang Xiao was so considerate. Not long after, the carriage arrived at the back door of Cloud Treading Inn. Qin Yining alighted from the carriage and saw two tall men waiting for him. When they saw Qin Yining, they bowed respectfully. Qin Yining felt that the two men looked familiar. They must have met at Ningyuan the other day. He smiled and nodded in return. The two men felt flattered and hurriedly cupped their hands and invited Qin Yining in. Bing Tang followed behind Qin Yining and whispered, I wonder if Master Zhong is here today. It's fine. I've already sent the account books over. It doesn't matter if he doesn't show up today. Bing Tang nodded. Huzi moved closer to Bing Tang and whispered with a smile, Hey, Potato Spirit, I think you've grown a little taller. Bing Tang rolled his eyes at him, unlike you. You're not short, but your brain isn't good. You haven't learned anything from Wang Yi, but you've learned to be glib and shameless. Huzi blinked and then shouted angrily, Don't drag Wang Yi into your scolding. You can say that I'm shameless, but how is our Wang Yi shameless? How can you pretend to be sick if you don't act shamelessly? Bing Tang glared at him. Qin Yining listened to the two bickering and felt both angry and amused. He turned around and saw Bing Tang angrily glaring at Huzi with her big round eyes. Huzi was also glaring at Bing Tang, but he couldn't hide the smile in his eyes. The two people leading the way stopped and pushed open the door to the rich and noble pavilion. Miss Qin, please come in. Thank you. Qin Yining stepped through the door first. Huzi and Bing Tang glared at each other. Bing Tang snorted and stomped hard on Huzi's foot before quickly catching up with Qin Yining. Huzi looked at the small shoe print on her foot and chuckled. The two men at the door couldn't help but snicker when they saw Huzi's silly look. Qin Yining walked past the screen and into the inner room. She saw Pang Xiao wearing a snow-white undergarment, with a light purple robe draped over his shoulders. He was sitting on the Arhat bed by the window, leaning against a big pillow and reading a book. Upon closer inspection, Qin Yining realized that his complexion wasn't very good. His lips were a little pale and his hair was a little messy. Wang Yi isn't feeling well. Qin Yining sat down on the embroidered stool next to the square table. Pang Xiao put down the book and supported his temples with one hand. He tilted his head and looked at Qin Yining. I do feel a little sick. That's why I invited Bing Tang to treat this king. Why didn't you bring Airby with you? Qin Yining gestured for Bing Tang to treat Pang Xiao. I heard that Wang Yi is sick. Since you're here to treat him, it'll be more convenient to bring Airby with you. Pang Xiao was a little dejected as he said, Oh. But then he smiled and said, It's fine. Airby isn't coming. It's good to be able to see you. What kind of words are you saying? It's as if I'm inferior to a rabbit. Qin Yining had just thought of this when he felt that something wasn't right. That's right. Why am I fighting with a rabbit? Qin Yining looked up and met Pang Xiao's smiling eyes. He glared at him angrily and said, Look at you. You're quite energetic. You don't look like you're suffering from a relapse. Pang Xiao covered his mouth and coughed twice. It wasn't clear if he was really coughing or trying to hold back his laughter. His voice was low and magnetic as he said, I'm indeed not feeling well. Bing Tang had already taken a pulse pillow and checked Pang Xiao's pulse. After a careful examination, he stood up and sighed. Although this isn't a relapse, it's still dangerous. Wang Yi, you have to be more optimistic. Although I can't treat your illness, maybe you'll meet someone with great medical skills in the future who can treat your illness. It's not a terminal illness. Don't be too sad. Pang Xiao looked at Bing Tang calmly. Huzi turned pale with fright. What? Wang Yi is really sick. Hurry up and tell me. What's wrong? How can I treat him? I'll get you whatever medicine you need. Bing Tang said seriously, Wang Yi's lovesickness is beyond cure. Forgive me for my shallow medical skills. I don't know how to treat him. Huzi was stunned. Qin Yining blushed and glared at Bing Tang. Pang Xiao laughed heartily. Good girl. You're really good at medical skills. You're really good at diagnosing. However, I don't have to wait to find a famous doctor in the future. Didn't you bring me the medicinal primer? He looked at Qin Yining gently. Seeing your miss, I feel like I'm cured. Qin Yining was embarrassed and annoyed. She grabbed the lid of the teacup on the table and threw it at Pang Xiao. Are you crazy? You're full of nonsense. Pang Xiao casually caught the lid of the blue and white porcelain teacup. He smiled and said, I'm not crazy. I'm just drunk. When he saw the bandage on Qin Yining's hand, his expression changed. What happened to your hand? He didn't notice that her hand was hidden in her sleeve. Bing Tang took out her silver needles and gestured for Pang Xiao to sit up. She said, Miss beat up Qin Huining in the mansion. Her hand was cut twice by the golden hairpin. Her knuckles are also bruised and scraped. It's not a big problem, but it'll hurt for a while. As she spoke, she neatly inserted the needles into Pang Xiao's shoulder. Pang Xiao didn't care and let her do it. Because he was sitting upright on the arhat bed, he could only reach out a hand to Qin Yining. He said seriously, come here. Let me take a look. Qin Yining sat still. It's just a superficial wound. Pang Xiao's brows were tightly knit together. His phoenix-like eyes were filled with rage, and his handsome face was tainted with a murderous aura. He couldn't help but raise his voice. His voice was low and deep, and it shook the hearts of others. Come over here. Qin Yining was stunned by his shout. She looked at him with her watery eyes and then looked away. She still didn't move as if she didn't hear him. On the other hand, Huzi was so frightened that all the hair on his body stood up. When his Wang Yi was angry, the people around him didn't dare to disobey him. His cold aura was like that of a beast about to eat people. Not everyone could withstand it. Miss Qin actually dared to pretend that she didn't hear him. Bing Tang was so scared that he stopped and turned around to look at Qin Yining. Pang Xiao stood up with a sullen face. He didn't care about the needle in his arm. He grabbed Qin Yining's injured right hand and suppressed his anger. You didn't listen when I asked you to come here. You asked me to come here personally. If it's for your own good, you have to listen to me. Why should I listen to you? Who are you to me? Qin Yining struggled twice but couldn't withdraw her hand. Her heart was still trembling because of Pang Xiao's shout. She couldn't help showing some grievance. Pang Xiao saw a layer of mist in her watery eyes and knew she was short of breath. He deftly untied the bandage and saw that there were indeed 2 cuts on her palms. Although they were no longer bleeding after applying medicine, the wounds were still somewhat red and swollen. Her finger joints were also bruised and swollen. He could not help but feel sorry for her. He brought her hands to his lips and blew on them gently. Did Qin Huining bully you? Chapter 161. Qin Yining's hand was held by Pang Xiao's large hand. She could clearly feel the friction from the rough calluses on his palm, as well as the temperature that was obviously higher than her own body. She hurriedly tried to withdraw her hand, but her wrist was held by Pang Xiao neither loosely nor tightly. It was not enough to hurt her, but she could not withdraw even half an inch. Qin Yining's cheeks turned red. She rolled her watery eyes at Pang Xiao. She knew that she could not break free, so she stopped struggling. She only sneered and said, "You are underestimating me." She wanted to bully me, but now she is the one who is in a worse situation. Pang Xiao's eyes looked at the person who was just a moment ago, soft and weak, but suddenly became fierce. He felt that the soft part was softer, the fierce part was also fiercer. It was as if Bai, who did not have much destructive power, was tickled by him, and then used his little buttocks to face him. He really liked it. Seeing that the atmosphere between the two had eased, Bing Tang said, "Wang Yi, sit down first. The needles are not finished yet. You have a lot of old injuries. It is inevitable that you will feel pain and itch when it rains. Later, I will give you a prescription to recuperate. You will need to take it for 1.5 years to get better." Huzi said, "Wang Yi is usually in the military camp. It is difficult for him to take medicine to recuperate. However, as long as you are willing to give me a good prescription, I will carry the medicine to Wang Yi even if I have to carry the medicine to the battlefield." Pang Xiao sat down on the embroidered stool next to Qin Yining. Bing Tang took out the needles and continued to practice. Qin Yining understood the meaning behind Huzi's words. She asked, "Why didn't Wang Ye's Tiger Army go back to receive the reward after making such a great contribution? Is there going to be another battle?" Huzi heard this and secretly scolded himself for his slip of the tongue. He also lamented that Qin Yining was too sharp. He did not dare to look at Pang Xiao and lowered his head. Pang Xiao smiled and said, "Don't worry. No matter how busy I am during the training, I have a way to come and see you." Qin Yining understood that he wanted to say goodbye. He also knew that he was Wang Yi from Dezhou and could not stay in the Dian dynasty forever. Although he wanted to say goodbye, this person was too unscrupulous. "Wang Yi, it is better to be careful with your words. Aren't you afraid of criticism and misunderstanding?" Pang Xiao raised his eyebrows and said, "Go ask around. Go out and ask, this person was too." "Was." Qin Yining said with shame and annoyance, "Why are you so domineering? I hope you will not speak like this in the future. Who you like is your business. Don't make fun of me. You and I are from different countries. We have different standpoints. Moreover, there is a national grudge between us. You know it is impossible, so why do you keep doing this? That is to say, if there is no national grudge, if there is no national difference, you will think it is possible between us. At most, this prince will just eliminate these differences." Qin Yining looked at the serious Pang Xiao in surprise. At this time, he was different from his usual frivolous attitude in front of her. His expression was very focused and serious. Qin Yining's heart could not help but skip a beat. "You really don't have to joke with me about such a serious topic. I am a little girl. I can't bear it. Who told you that this was a joke?" "You." Qin Yining was so angry that her face turned red. Facing Pang Xiao, she could not understand what this person was thinking. He was always very domineering towards her. He never asked for her opinion, but everything he did was for her own good. She could not really get angry. He did things without any rules. Even if she wanted to plan something, she could not grasp the pattern. She could not predict what he would do next. In the officialdom, this kind of person was the type that people hated but could not do anything about. Why did she have to meet this kind of person? Seeing that Qin Yining looked away and did not say anything, Pang Xiao smiled helplessly and said, "Why are you angry? Don't think too much. You know that many things are irresistible. As if he could see that Qin Yining did not want to talk about this matter, Pang Xiao did not want to dwell on this topic. He sighed and said, "I know you are not at ease. Don't worry. I am not a frivolous person. Have you seen me flirt with others?" Qin Yining's face became hot again. Before she could say anything, Huzi said, "Fourth miss, I can testify that our Wang Yi has never been so attentive to any woman." He looked so serious that he almost raised 3 fingers to swear. Pang Xiao looked at Huzi with satisfaction and said to Qin Yining, "Don't worry. I will definitely think of a way to marry you." Qin Yining's mind exploded. Her face and ears turned red as she stared at Pang Xiao. She had mixed feelings and did not know what she was feeling. "When did I say that I wanted to marry you? The whole world knows that you are my woman. If you don't marry me, who do you want to marry?" Pang Xiao narrowed her almond-shaped eyes. There was a dangerous look in her eyes. "Or do you like bookworms like Yu Qiyan?" Qin Yining felt even more incredulous when she heard that he had implicated the crown prince. She said, "Why do you have to say such nonsense to stab me?" Pang Xiao looked at her carefully and said in a slightly gentler tone, "That guy only has a good appearance. He is indecisive and only knows how to write and draw. He is not good enough for you." Qin Yining wanted to say, "Then you are good enough for me." But she swallowed the words when they were about to come out of her mouth. Her face was as red as the sunset. Her face, neck, and ears were all red. Pang Xiao saw that her whole body had turned pink. She was as soft as a glutinous rice cake and he wanted to take a bite of her. He felt more and more tempted. At this time, Bing Tang had already removed the needles. Huzi went to prepare a robe for Pang Xiao. He looked at Qin Yining deeply and turned to go into the inner room to change. Bing Tang went to the side to write a prescription. Qin Yining looked down at her right hand that had been carefully bandaged by Pang Xiao while they were talking. She was a little lost in thought. Did she hate Pang Xiao? The answer was no. Not only did she not hate him, but sometimes when she saw him, she even faintly felt a little happy. He was indeed too domineering, but the things he did all showed how much he valued and liked her. She could not resist all of this, but it also warmed her heart. Especially when he saved and protected her time and time again. Qin Yining was a lonely person who was used to being independent. She was always planning for herself and for others. No matter if it was when she was a child or when she was in the Sun clan, she was always used to putting these people under her protection. Since she was a child, she rarely experienced the feeling of being protected by others. She even felt that even though she had given birth to a girl, she was actually stronger than a man on the inside. Only when she met Pang Xiao did she truly feel that she was a girl. She also knew that she also had times when she was weak and needed to rely on others. This kind of feeling made her thump. But while she was secretly happy and excited, her rationality kept telling her that there were too many things between them. Qin Yining's slender and fair left hand gently stroked her right hand, and her lowered eyelashes covered the emotions in her eyes. Pang Xiao came out wearing a black python robe and saw Qin Yining with her head lowered, deep in thought. Her satin long hair was softly draped behind her back, and her fair and delicate neck looked slender. The outline of her side profile was also very beautiful. Her slightly knitted eyebrows and lowered eyelashes all showed that she had something on her mind, as if she had accumulated a lot of worries and had nowhere to vent them. This realization made Pang Xiao feel like a stone was pressing down on his heart. In the past, he couldn't figure out his own thoughts. He only felt that he cared and was curious about Qin Yining because they met when they were young. Or maybe it was because all her suffering was caused by his father's AIDS, so he felt that she was innocent and wanted to make up for it. Or maybe it was because they were both controlled by people's fates. Pang Xiao admitted that he was too domineering towards her, and it was all because of a little possessiveness. But these days, he couldn't control his emotions every time he encountered her. His rationality often lost and his feelings took the upper hand. Everything he did was biased towards her. This made him understand that perhaps his heart was more honest than his rationality, and he might like her more than he expected. At first, he felt that they were separated by the country and their relationship was complicated. Her father was also a famous Dayan minister. As the only prince with a different surname in Dezhou, it would be difficult for him to marry her officially. But the more he interacted with her, the more his heart was biased towards her. He even began to feel that even if marrying her was a very difficult thing, it would require a lot of energy, and he would have to change many of his previous plans and redeploy many things. All of this seemed to be worth it. Perhaps Qin Yining still had some resistance. But in Pang Zhao's heart, he already regarded her as his woman. And making his woman frown was his biggest incompetence as a man. What's wrong? Pang Zhao squatted in front of Qin Yining. Qin Yining was surprised by his actions and quickly shook her head. The pearl buyao behind her head swayed with a bright halo. If there's anything that makes you unhappy, just tell me. Pang Zhao's tone was very serious. His intimate and natural words made Qin Yining a little absent-minded. It was as if they had known each other for a long time and were used to speaking so naturally. Wang Yi, you don't have to, you can just call me Zhishi. Pang Zhao took her hand and stood up. I told you a long time ago that my courtesy name is Zhishi. Qin Yining's face turned red again. She lowered her head and refused to answer. How intimate was it to call a man by his courtesy name? Seeing that her face was almost hanging on his chest, Pang Zhao was in a good mood. He smiled and said, my subordinates sent a few good Dezhou horses. I picked 2 docile ones. I'll give one to you and the other to Miss Tang as a thank you gift for treating my illness. The weather is good today. How about I take you to the suburbs for a walk? Bing Tang's eyes lit up when she heard this. She didn't even bother to pack her medical kit and eagerly said, Wang Yi, are you serious? Of course I'm serious. Pang Zhao bent down slightly to look at Qin Yining's face. How about it? Do you want to go? Qin Yining wanted to go very much. Although she had never learned proper horsemanship, she knew how to ride a horse. Because she had been saved by a wild horse before and lived with a herd of wild horses, she had a special liking for horses. However, it was a little unreasonable for her to follow him to ride a horse. Pang Zhao grabbed her uninjured left hand. His strength was very gentle, but his words were full of impatience. I shouldn't have asked for your opinion. Next time, I'll just kidnap you and leave. Qin Yining was dragged downstairs just like that. Chapter 162. Qin Yining had lived in the mansion for a long time. Even though the master's study was located next to the back garden of the Marquis's mansion, one could see the man-made lake, vegetation, and rocks just by leaning against the railing. However, no matter how beautiful the man-made scenery was, it could not compare to the natural scenery in front of one's eyes. This place was already outside the city. It was early spring in the south. In April, the grass was long and the orioles were flying in the air. Qin Yining and Pang Zhao stood side by side and looked around. The wide grassland was occasionally dotted with new wildflowers. The mountains in the distance were lush green. Not far away, there was a small river that reflected the clear blue sky. The sound of water gurgling could be heard. Occasionally, there were gray rabbits jumping happily on the grassland. White butterflies were flying and dancing on the unknown wildflowers. Their breath was filled with the unique fragrance of spring grass. Nearby, there were a few horses eating grass with their heads lowered. For a moment, Qin Yining felt as if she had returned to the difficult but free time in the mountains. How is it? Do you like it? Pang Xiao asked her with his hands behind his back and his head lowered. His eyes were somewhat cautious, like a child who longed for praise. Qin Yining laughed softly and nodded. I like it very much. How did you find this place? Seeing that she was no longer wearing a straight face and was emphasizing etiquette and status like an old scholar, Pang Xiao was very happy. He smiled and said, I'm used to being free. When I have nothing to do, I like to ride a horse and go out for a ride. I found this place by chance and wanted to bring you here to take a look. He held her hand with his large hand and walked towards the horses at the side. Qin Yining's face flushed red. She struggled twice, but his large hand held her even tighter. Looking around, Qin Yining saw that the people Pang Xiao brought were all looking down with no expression on their faces. Only then did Qin Yining's heart feel a little better. Pang Xiao pointed at a tall white horse not far away and said with a smile, This is White Cloud. I'm giving it to you. Do you like it? Qin Yining was captivated by the handsome white horse in front of him at first glance. Its body was a shiny silvery white color without any impurities, and its coat was as bright as silver satin under the sun. Its big, furry eyes were moist and gentle, and when it saw Qin Yining approaching, it broke free from the retainer holding the horse and trotted happily to Qin Yining. It lowered its head and gently rubbed against Qin Yining's cheek and neck, as if they had grown up together. Qin Yining laughed happily. He stretched out his long arms and hugged the white horse's neck. You're called by Yun. Do you like me? The horse gently rubbed Qin Yining's neck and cheeks. You're so beautiful. I like you so much. Qin Yining hugged White Cloud and didn't let go. Pang Xiao had never seen Qin Yining so happy. He had never heard her laughter so clear and melodious, and he had never heard her speak in such a soft and delicate tone as if she was coaxing a child. In his memory, Qin Yining was always cautious, self-restrained, intelligent, and decisive. She was rational and strong. She didn't seem like an unmarried woman at all, but like an adult who had experienced a lot. Only when she was so lively and happy now, she was a real 15-year-old girl. Her voice was like a small brush brushing against Pang Xiao's heart. In fact, he also wanted to hug her neck and say to her, You're so beautiful. I like you so much. Qin Yining hugged White Cloud's neck and turned around to ask Pang Xiao, Wang Yi really wants to give it to me? Her bright smile was still on her face, and the two dimples on her cheeks were extremely cute. Pang Xiao's gaze was extremely soft. He smiled and said, Of course it's true. White Cloud is also a Fergana horse. It's a distant relative of Black Cloud. It can be considered as his younger brother. If you miss me in the future, let White Cloud take you out for a walk. Pang Xiao took over the reins handed to him by Huzi, then patted his warhorse, which had a shiny black coat. Qin Yining nodded repeatedly. Black Cloud, White Cloud, it sounds like they are relatives. She took the reins and nimbly mounted the horse. Her skirt fluttered lightly, drawing a beautiful arc on the horse's body. Pang Xiao saw her confident and at ease posture of mounting the horse, and her valiant and formidable-looking appearance as she sat upright on the horse. His heart thumped like a drum several times. He fought on the battlefield and was in a trance. Naturally, he didn't admire those delicate and weak women, nor did he like women who only knew how to put on airs. He was attracted to Qin Yining because of her appearance, but more because of her temperament and way of dealing with things. But today, just Qin Yining's action of mounting the horse really hit his heart. Pang Xiao seemed to hear the sound of fireworks exploding in the sky. She was indeed the one who should belong to him. She was good at both civil and martial arts. She was both tough and soft. How could Qin Yining have the time to pay attention to Pang Xiao's performance? She shook the reins, and White Cloud immediately galloped away excitedly. She lowered her body, her long hair fluttering behind her head and her skirt fluttering in the wind. She heard the sound of the wind whistling in her ears. The wind hit her face and body, and the refreshing air was mixed with the fragrance of grass and flowers. She felt that all the depression in her heart had disappeared in this vast world. Huzi and the Jinghu Wei saw Qin Yining mounting the horse and galloping away. They were originally nervous and wanted to chase after her. What a joke! If something happened to Miss Qin under their watch, Wang Yi would definitely swallow them alive. But in just a few breaths, White Cloud had already galloped several zhang away. Although their horses ran fast, they couldn't keep up with White Cloud's speed. Fortunately, upon closer inspection, Qin Yining's riding skills were very exquisite, which made them feel relieved. Huzi turned the horse around and galloped back to Pang Zhao's side. Seeing Pang Zhao holding the reins and standing beside Black Cloud in a daze, and her eyes were blurred as if she was deep in thought, Pang Zhao couldn't help but worry. "Master, fourth young lady has already run far away. Aren't you going to chase after her and take a look?" Pang Zhao came back to her senses and steadied her mind before jumping onto the horse's back. Looking into the distance, Qin Yining's figure had already turned into a small dot. Pang Zhao couldn't help laughing. "With White Cloud's speed, we won't be able to catch up. Don't worry, she'll be back soon." Huzi said, "I didn't expect fourth young lady's riding skills to be so exquisite. White Cloud is usually so arrogant that I can't even touch it. But when it saw fourth young lady, it actually clung on to her. It really doesn't have any of the pride of a Fergana horse. Could it be that horses nowadays also know how to look at beauties?" As soon as Huzi finished speaking, he felt a chill run down his spine. He turned around and saw Pang Zhao's half-smiling eyes. Huzi's heart quivered. He carefully recalled what he had just said and immediately began to sweat profusely. He swore to the heavens that he definitely didn't mean to mock his Wang Yi. "Hey, master, I'll go check on Potato Fairy." Huzi pulled the reins and fled in panic. He chased after Bing Tang, who was happily riding on a date red horse. Pang Zhao found it funny. He urged his horse to meet Qin Yining, but he was thinking about another problem. Should he not have given Qin Yining a stallion? He should have picked a mare for her. Thinking about how Qin Yining hugged White Cloud, praised it for its beauty, and said that he liked it, Pang Zhao couldn't help but feel depressed. Qin Yining didn't hug him, didn't praise him for his beauty, and didn't say that he liked him. He couldn't even compare to a horse. Chapter 163. Qin Yining had not felt so refreshed in a long time. Ever since she returned to the Marquis Fu, her days had been like walking on thin ice. Her only goal was to continue living. Later, she experienced the fall of her maternal family. She was forced to participate in the peace talks, her mother was almost beheaded, and she was kidnapped by her maternal grandmother. When she thought about all of these things, she realized that in less than half a year after returning to the Fu, she had racked her brains more than she had in the 14 years she had spent outside. Her self-restraint had also reached the limit. Today, she felt as if she had thrown away all of her worries after letting the reins go. Gradually slowing down, Qin Yining looked at the man sitting on the tall horse and wearing a black embroidered robe. Qin Yining's mind was momentarily distracted. The tall and handsome man sat on the black and shiny horse. His back was straight, and he had the masculine and heroic aura of a soldier. Paired with his long eyebrows, phoenix eyes, high nose, and thin lips, there was a sense of freedom in his handsomeness. His smile even had some joy and naivety. Scenes from when they had met each other flooded her mind. Qin Yining could not help but blush. She forced herself to look away, afraid that his charm and sharpness would burn her eyes. Pang Zhao urged his horse closer, and the two pulled on the reins. White Cloud and Black Cloud seemed to be familiar with each other. They snorted and approached each other, their necks touching, their ears rubbing against each other. Pang Xiao looked at Qin Yining with a smile. "How is it? Don't you feel much better after running for a while?" Qin Yining's cheeks were red. He nodded heavily and said, "I haven't run so freely in a long time. I have to thank you for giving me White Cloud. If you want to thank me, are you only going to say it verbally?" Pang Xiao shook the reins and rode side by side with Qin Yining. The two Fergana horses, one black and one white, slowly walked towards the official road. Qin Yining smiled and said, "Is Wang Yi such a petty person? All right, how do you want me to thank you? I want you to devote yourself to me. Do you agree?" Pang Xiao laughed. Qin Yining's face suddenly turned red, and he glared at him with a red face and ears. Why is Wang Yi always joking like this? He's not a lecher, yet he keeps saying such things. People will laugh at him if they hear him. Who dares to laugh at me? Pang Xiao leaned closer to Qin Yining and looked at her seriously. Besides, I'm not joking. Qin Yining pursed her lips. Her long eyelashes fluttered, but she didn't say a word. She simply allowed Pang Xiao to hold her reins, allowing the white cloud and the dark cloud to travel side by side. From Pang Xiao's angle, he could see her red ears and neck, as well as her long eyelashes fluttering like butterfly wings when she was nervous. Seeing that she did not speak, Pang Xiao was delighted. She didn't reject him, which meant that she didn't hate him. Maybe she liked him. There was no rush. As long as she didn't hate him, there was still hope. Pang Xiao chuckled and suddenly urged his horse to gallop on the official road. Qin Yining was startled and quickly grabbed the reins. Why did you suddenly speed up? You scared me. Her reproachful words were carried by the wind to his ears. They were soft and gentle, making him itch from the bottom of his heart. The sky was blue and the trees were green. The sky was high and the ground was wide. He was riding his beloved horse with his beloved woman by his side. Pang Xiao only felt an unprecedented satisfaction at this moment. A sense of heroism arose spontaneously, making him laugh loudly. His laughter lasted for a long time. Huzi and the two Jinghu Wei who were following behind felt his carefree and heroic spirit, and they also laughed out loud. Huzi thought of the war song in the army, so he stretched his neck and sang loudly, clad in iron armor, carrying a long sword. Fighting with my son, the road is long. Huzi's voice was loud and clear, which was unique to youth. In the vast world, Qin Yining couldn't help but feel agitated when he heard such a voice full of energy. Just as Qin Yining turned around to look, Pang Xiao's deep and vigorous voice sounded beside him. Sharing a common enemy, living and dying together. Fighting with my son, my heart is not lazy. The two Jinghu Wei also sang loudly, stepping on Yan Ran, chasing after Hu Er. Fighting with my son, my song is fearless. The man's deep and vigorous voice was not tactful, only full of heroic spirit. In such a vast world, with comrades by his side and hot blood surging, the war song sung by these iron-blooded men in the army was majestic, with the momentum of a landslide and a tsunami. Qin Yining's heart trembled and his cheeks flushed. He even felt a sense of anticipation for riding his horse on the battlefield. These were real men who fought on the battlefield. Even if they were from different countries, in troubled times, they would rather be cut to pieces to protect their own countries. But compared to the prosperity and corruption of the Dayan imperial capital, Qin Yining couldn't help but sigh when she thought of the fatuous emperor and the demon empress who sought pleasure all day long, committing all sorts of outrages, and having the courage to murder meritorious officials, but without the courage to draw a bow on the battlefield and trample on the ground. After running for a while, Pang Xiao slowed down. Qin Yining looked over and saw a large group of people on the official road not far away. Although they were still far away, she could see that the leader was Qin Huayuan, who was wearing a red official's robe. The rest of the people were all wearing officials' robes. Because she didn't know them, she couldn't see their faces clearly. But she could tell that there were Dian officials and Dezhou soldiers in this group. Qin Yining's heart skipped a beat. She looked at Pang Xiao questioningly. Pang Xiao had already let go of her reins and led Huzi and the two Jinghu Wei soldiers forward. Qin Yining naturally slowed down her horse's hooves and stopped a distance away from Bing Tang. Bing Tang was also surprised. He whispered, "Miss, I'm afraid they are here to send us off." Today should be the day Wang Yi departs. Qin Yining couldn't hide the complex emotions in her eyes. She sighed faintly and felt an indescribable sense of loss in her heart. This person probably tricked her to come out because he wanted to see her again. But after the joy and happiness she had just experienced, she suddenly had to face separation. Qin Yining felt an indescribable sense of sorrow in her heart. She was surprised to find that there were tears in her eyes. This was really bad. What was her relationship with him? Why was she sad? Qin Huayuan saw that his daughter was following behind Pang Xiao's group. Qin Yining and Bing Tang's horses were exceptionally handsome and were even taller than the horses of Dian. He knew that Pang Xiao must have sent them off. Today's trip must have been planned by Pang Xiao. Qin Huayuan couldn't help but feel a bit helpless. There were many officials from the Ministry of Rites present today to send them off. The rumors of Pang Xiao and Qin Yining's relationship had already spread throughout the city. They had publicly expressed their feelings for each other and even sent them off as gifts. Now that Pang Xiao was returning to the country, there were actually women sending them off in a place where women shouldn't be. Didn't this prove the relationship between the two even more? The officials from the Ministry of Rites had already started to exchange greetings with Pang Xiao. They exchanged some pleasantries. The group of people sending them off and escorting them moved forward in an orderly manner. Taking advantage of the fact that Pang Xiao was leading the group, Qin Huayuan quickly walked in front of Qin Yining and said, "You and Miss Tang should go back first." Qin Yining nodded and was about to agree. Unexpectedly, Pang Xiao could still hear the commotion even though they were so far away. He turned around and said, "This place is very far from the capital. I'm afraid it's not safe for Miss Qin to go back alone. Since we're already here, why don't we let her accompany us? It's not impossible for her to follow Grand Preceptor Qin back to the city later." The officials from the Ministry of Rites looked at each other with an expression that said, "As expected." Lian Xingjie stared blankly at Qin Yining, who was sitting upright on the white horse, with eyes full of envy and desire. Qin Huayuan could only sigh when he heard this. He got on his horse and said, "Come with me. Later, come back with your father." Qin Yining could only nod and stare at Pang Xiao from a distance. Although she knew that he was probably reluctant to leave so suddenly and was just thinking of a way to spend more time with her, she was still very unhappy that he had planned everything but was unwilling to tell her. Unexpectedly, Pang Xiao was not angry when Qin Yining stared at him. He even laughed out loud and confidently continued to chat with the officials beside him. Qin Yining, on the other hand, was so angry that his face turned red. Amidst their conversation, the procession moved on for about an hour, and it was time for the civil official to return. For the rest of the journey, the soldiers of Great Yen, who were responsible for the safety of the envoy, and the elite tiger guards who served Pang Xiao, would continue to escort him. The group slowly stopped. Pang Xiao said to Lian Xingjie, who was accompanying him, "This king has been summoned back to the capital. From now on, the matter of reparations between Yen and Zhou will be handed over to Lian Darren. I hope that Darren will not forget the proper business and will not disappoint the emperor." Lian Xingjie's mouth twitched. He was now afraid of Pang Xiao. When he saw him, he wanted to hide. Even if he used a high and mighty tone to admonish Pang Xiao, he only wanted Pang Xiao to scram. Lian Xingjie respectfully cupped his hands and responded, Wang Yi, do not worry. Pang Xiao raised his eyebrows and smiled. Among the people sending them off, there were a few people who suspected that Pang Xiao's position in the Zhou Emperor's heart had fallen. In the end, Pang Xiao was the Zhou Emperor's sworn brother. If his position had really fallen, how could a proud person like Lian Xingjie accept Pang Xiao's admonishment? They probably had to consider whether the rumors were true or false. Pang Xiao had already moved his horse towards Qin Yining. The dark clouds were black and shiny, while the white clouds were silvery white. The two equally precious horses rubbed their necks against each other as soon as they saw each other. Pang Xiao, who was sitting upright on the dark cloud, looked at Qin Yining with a smile. Qin Yining wanted nothing more than to immediately jump off the back of the white cloud and flee. He was afraid that Pang Xiao would say something that would shock him to death. Even if you accompany a guest for 1,000 miles, you still have to part in the end. Take care of yourself, Miss Qin. Qin Yining secretly let out a sigh of relief. Prince Zhongshuan, take care. Pang Xiao then cupped his hands towards Qin Huayuan. Grand Preceptor Qin. Qin Huayuan returned the greeting. Wang Yi, have a safe journey. The two sides said their goodbyes. Huzi also made a face at Bing Tang. This time, they were truly saying their goodbyes. Pang Xiao and Huzi turned their horses around and headed towards the front of the group. Qin Yining frowned slightly as he looked at Pang Xiao's back. Unexpectedly, at this moment, the majestic sound of horse hooves suddenly came from both sides of the road. Looking left and right, there were actually more than 30 riders rushing out from the forest and bushes on both sides of the road. Every single one of them had a weapon in their hands. The edges of their blades and swords shone brightly under the sunlight as they charged out with murderous intent. Kill the one surnamed Feng. Kill him. The roars of the 30 or so men resounded through the sky as they charged into the group in the blink of an eye. No one expected that there would be assassins lying in ambush on the way to see them off. Qin Yining tightly pursed his red lips as he assessed the strength of the enemy. Just as he was about to turn around and speak to Qin Huayuan, he suddenly felt something tighten around his waist. The next moment, he was lifted into the air and immediately fell into a warm embrace. Pang Xiao actually rushed over and hugged her from white clouds back into his arms. He casually drew his sword and brandished it to parry the blades that were coming towards him. He slapped Black Cloud with the scabbard, and like a bolt of black lightning, Black Cloud sped forward with Pang Xiao and Qin Yining in tow. They rushed out of the group and left the chaos behind them. Don't let them escape. Chase after them. The assassins' roars shook the heavens as they urged their horses to chase after them. Chapter 164. The Black Horse Galloped. White Cloud had caught up at some point and was not far behind Black Cloud. Behind them were Huzi and Pang Xiao's two bodyguards, who were following them from a distance. The 30 or so assassins who were chasing after them were also closely following them. The sound of horse hooves and shouting came from behind them. Qin Yining did not know what was going on with Qin Huayuan. She wanted to look back nervously, but Pang Xiao's tall body blocked her view. Hold on tight, don't be afraid. Pang Xiao hugged her waist with one hand and whispered into her ear. Black Cloud sped up. The cold wind whistled and messed up her long hair. The strong wind hurt her cheeks. Because she was sitting sideways and the saddle was limited, she was sitting very uncomfortable. She was also afraid that she would fall off the horse. At this moment, she could not care so much. She could only hold on tightly to Pang Xiao's clothes and bury her face in his chest. Looking down at the person in his arms, Pang Xiao's eyes were so soft that water could come out of them. One of his iron arms wrapped around her, as if he had built a solid wall around her. Don't worry. Now it seems that those people came for me. The officials who saw us off should be fine. Qin Yining was surprised that he could read her worries. Pang Xiao said again, now you were pulled onto the horse by me. You were implicated by me. Do you resent me? At this time, you still ask these questions. Qin Yining raised her head to look at him. She felt that this position was too intimate. Her body stiffened and she quickly lowered her head. Resent you for what? As soon as she finished speaking, Qin Yining heard his deep and happy laughter. She was so close to him that she could even hear the vibrations in his chest. Her face heated up. She wanted to keep a distance, but the space on the horse was limited. For a moment, she didn't know what to do. At this moment, Pang Xiao really wished that he could keep her by his side forever. He wanted to bring her away from all the troubles of the mortal world and the disputes of the imperial court. He had read a lot of emotions in her eyes just now. There was embarrassment, nervousness, and uneasiness, but there was none of the resentment that he was most afraid of. She was not like those common women. She was intelligent and rational, cunning but also benevolent. She could understand his painstaking efforts. Even if she was in danger because of him, she would not take it out on him. Pang Xiao's arms tightened around her. Qin Yining could only accept her fate and let him hug her like this. However, for some reason, there was a small flame burning in her heart. The heat spread all the way to her cheeks and burned her face until it was as red as a piece of cloth. Qin Yining even despised herself in her heart. They were being hunted down, yet she still had the leisure to think about such nonsense at such a critical moment. Pang Xiao rushed forward with Qin Yining. Black Cloud was running to his heart's content. However, the assassin was in hot pursuit, and the dark cloud was carrying the two of them. After running for 2 hours, he whistled and called White Cloud over. He took Qin Yining and jumped on White Cloud's back. White Cloud looked docile, but in fact, its physical strength and endurance were not inferior to Black Cloud's. However, Huzi and the two Jinghu Wei's horses were exhausted. Pang Xiao turned around and made a gesture. Huzi and Jinghu Wei immediately slowed down. It was almost sunset. Qin Yining saw White Cloud and Black Cloud run faster after Pang Xiao made a gesture. The sound of chasing behind them was getting farther and farther away. She became more worried. Wang Yi. If we leave like this, what will happen to Huzi and the others? Pang Xiao chuckled with emotion. You are still worried about others at this time. Don't worry. They have their own ways to escape. Qin Yining frowned. But there are so many assassins, don't worry. I know what to do. Qin Yining could only remain silent. At this time, the only thing she could do was to rely on Pang Xiao. There was no other way. The sun and the moon alternated. In the blink of an eye, the moon was in the middle of the sky. Not far behind them, there was still the sound of horse hooves. Black Cloud and White Cloud had already taken turns to carry them for nearly 12 hours. Even Fergana horses had a limit to their physical strength. Qin Yining frowned worriedly. Wang Yi, they are chasing us relentlessly. What should we do? Pang Xiao turned his head to take a look, and a pensive look appeared in his eyes. Qin Yining's shoulder was numb from the cold. The spring night was wet and cold. She was sitting on a galloping horse. The cold wind under the sun was very fresh, but the wind in the middle of the night was very cold. Hearing Pang Xiao's sigh, Qin Yining felt the horse slow down. Qin Yining raised his head and asked anxiously, "What's wrong?" Pang Xiao hugged her with his large hands and rubbed her cold shoulders and arms. Are you cold? This cold is nothing. At such a critical time, how can I be in the mood to care about these things? She said it calmly, but Pang Xiao's heart ached. The horse slowed down again. Qin Yining became even more anxious. Are you injured? If she wasn't injured, Pang Xiao wouldn't have slowed down. The assassins behind them were like a pack of hungry wolves biting their prey. Pang Xiao's 2 fists couldn't fight against 4 hands. How could he resist? Pang Xiao laughed. His laughter was deep and happy. I'm not injured. Don't worry. He held the reins with one hand and held the back of her head with the other. He lowered his head and kissed her lips without warning. She was unprepared for his invasion. Under the entanglement of their lips and tongues, she was so frightened that she even forgot to breathe. At the place where they touched, a numbing feeling spread throughout her body, making her forget the cold and the fear of being chased. Pang Xiao's urgent and domineering demands made his body heat up. Watching her soften into a puddle of spring water in his arms, he really wanted to take her away like this. After a long while, their lips parted. Qin Yining's breathing became rapid. Why did you? This is for you. She felt a cold sensation on her wrist. Looking down under the bright moonlight, Pang Xiao was tying a string of red bean bracelets on her wrist. I made this myself. I've never made it before, so it's a little rough. Don't mind it. This is a keepsake. Pang Xiao lowered his head and kissed her forehead again. I'll definitely find a way to marry you. No matter what obstacles there are between us, you can rest assured that I'll handle them properly. There's only one thing. Remember, you're mine. Qin Yining's heart was beating wildly. Her brain was almost unable to process it. Pang Xiao's tough words were still lingering in her ears. No matter who it is, whether he likes you or you like someone else, as long as I find out, I'll kill him. Remember, you can only be mine. Pang Xiao kissed her again on her trembling eyelashes. The sound of the horse's hooves was right behind Pang Xiao. Pang Xiao stopped Black Cloud. Qin Yining forced herself to calm down, but she was a little suspicious in her heart. Sure enough, within the span of a breath, the horse hooves of the pursuers stopped in unison. Huzi dismounted from the horse and came forward to salute. Wang Yi. Well, how far are the people who sent you off in Dian? They've been chasing us, but Dian's horses are different from ours. They'll be at least 30 minutes away from here. Pang Xiao nodded and waved his hand to let them leave. Then he put his hands around Qin Yining's slender waist, lowered his head and looked at her tenderly. Don't be angry. I just want to spend more time with you. After today, I don't know when we'll meet again. Qin Yining pursed her lips and didn't say anything. Pang Xiao sighed as he saw her silence. Then, he said, take Bai Yun with you and find a secluded place to hide. Your father's men will catch up with you very soon. Your safety will be guaranteed. At that time, you can tell everyone that I was chased by a group of Titan assassins. I was afraid of involving you, so I found an opportunity to hide you on the way. If someone asks you how you know that those assassins are Titan, you can tell them that they were chasing you and spoke in Titan. Do you remember? Qin Yining looked at Pang Xiao with a complicated expression. From the morning you said that you needed to treat the poison, everything was planned by you. Pang Xiao was speechless and nodded. Wang Yi is really resourceful. Qin Yining gave it a careful thought. In fact, there were many flaws in her plan today. For example, why did those assassins not kill any of the officials from Great Yen who came to see her off? Why did they keep chasing after Pang Xiao? Although Pang Xiao had protected her well along the way, he did not show any sign of panic. It was just that when she was in Pang Xiao's arms, her heart was disturbed and she couldn't think carefully. She lost her calm mind and the ability to make accurate judgments. He was clearly the one who arranged for them. Why did he say that they were Titan people? How did he know that the Titan people were in the capital? If the news that the Titan people took the opportunity to assassinate Prince Zhongshuan of Dezhou on Dian spread out, what would the consequences be? Qiao Yuqing should have already handed the Taitan people she caught to the emperor. The emperor should have heard the confessions of those people. The emperor wasn't stupid. As long as those people let out a little bit of information, they would be able to implicate Qiao Guozhang. Now, Pang Zhao's plan was equivalent to adding fuel to the fire of Qiao Guozhang's collusion with the Taitan people. In this way, Pang Zhao's move was also to give her and her father a big gift. You are really... Qin Yining sighed. Pang Zhao looked at her nervously. He had been observing her expression. She didn't get angry when he kissed her forcefully. She also didn't get angry when he threatened her not to like other people. Only when she knew that today's matter was arranged by him, did she become a little sluggish. Now, she looked like she had thought it through and sighed with emotion. Pang Zhao's hanging heart was relieved. He couldn't help but laugh. He said in her ear, Sister Yi. You clearly like me. Are you still not going to admit it? Qin Yining's body trembled when his warm breath blew on her ear. She pushed him. Pang Zhao only felt like he was patted by a little rabbit with its furry paw. Looking at the sky and listening to the movements behind him, Pang Zhao sighed. He held her slender waist with both hands and put her down on the horse's back. He bent down and gently patted her head. Okay, go hide. Don't worry about anything else. Remember what I said just now. Qin Yining took White Cloud and retreated a few steps. Pang Zhao signaled to Huzi behind him. He then raised his whip and said, This king is very dissatisfied with being chased by Taitan people in your Dian territory. Let your emperor do as he sees fit. As he said this, he urged the horse's belly. Black Cloud quickly rushed out. Huzi and the guards also followed. Qin Yining stood by the road and watched the group of fake Taitan people chase after them. He sighed and led Black Cloud to the side of the forest. Small theater, Yining, the worst way I have ever walked in my life is Wang Ye's trick. Pang Zhao, little rabbit seems to be angry. Chapter 165. Qin Yining didn't have to wait for long before the sound of hurried horse hooves could be heard from afar on the official road. She calculated that it was about time and assumed that the people responsible for escorting Pang Zhao on Dian had caught up. She led White Cloud out of the dense forest, mounted the horse, and headed in the direction of the official road. Under the moonlight, White Cloud's silver-white fur glowed with a layer of white light. It galloped on the grass that was wet with dew and sparkled like a divine steed. The person sitting on the horse was dressed in a plain brocade that also glowed faintly. It was difficult to ignore her. There were about 20 people chasing after them on Dian. When they saw Qin Yining, they all slowed down. In the blink of an eye, Qin Yining rode closer. Everyone saw her clearly and said in surprise, Miss Qin. Qin Yining nodded, It's me. Where are my father and Lord Chui? It's really Miss Qin. That's great. Marquis Anping and Lord Chui are behind us. We are responsible for chasing after the assassins and protecting Wang Yi in Dezhou. It's good that Miss Qin is fine. The leader thought for a moment and said, We still have important matters to attend to. We can't stay here for long. Why is Miss Qin here? Without waiting for Qin Yining to answer, the leader said, I've arranged for someone to protect Miss Qin here. Marquis Anping and his people will arrive soon. Lord, your business is more important. We'll have to trouble you. Qin Yining nodded in understanding. These men were ordered to escort Prince Zhongxun out of the territory of Great Yan Dynasty, and they had to escort Pang Zhao out of the territory of Great Yan Dynasty. If anything happened to Prince Zhongxun in the territory of Great Yan, with the temperament of the Emperor of Great Zhou, it was highly possible that he would make some unreasonable demands. When the leader saw that Qin Yining was so reasonable, he couldn't help but admire the good upbringing of the Qin family. When he saw Qin Yining sitting on the horse in the night, he felt his face heat up. He quickly lowered his head and didn't dare to think too much. After instructing one person to stay behind to protect them, the rest of the men continued to chase after them. The one who stayed behind to protect Qin Yining was a middle-aged man in his 30s. He came forward and bowed before standing not far away. Qin Yining saw that Bai Yunfei was being polite, so he also dismounted and stroked Bai Yunfei's silvery mane. White Cloud seemed to be enjoying it very much. It lowered its head and rubbed Qin Yining's cheek. White Cloud and Black Cloud were the same. In addition to their outstanding bloodlines, endurance, speed, and explosive power, they were also very intelligent horses. Perhaps their intelligence was comparable to that of a 7 or 8-year-old human child. Therefore, Qin Yining treated Bai Yun like he was treating a smart child. He was very gentle. In this wilderness, it was thanks to White Cloud's presence that she felt a sense of security. After the time it took for an incense stick to burn, another wave of horse hooves could be heard. Qin Huaiyuan and the other officials saw the white horse and the woman in a light dress by the side of the official road from afar. They all hurriedly slowed down. Qin Huaiyuan hurriedly jumped off the back of his horse. The moment his feet touched the ground, his legs were somewhat weak. As a civil official, he had madly chased for more than 12 hours on his horse. His physical strength had long been exhausted. However, because his precious daughter had been taken away and he was caught in the pursuit, he was endlessly anxious. He held his breath and gritted his teeth to persevere. After a few quick steps, Qin Yining had already arrived to greet him. Qin Huaiyuan saw that Qin Yining's clothes were neat and tidy. Only his long hair was slightly messy. It didn't seem like he had suffered any injuries. He was finally able to breathe a sigh of relief. "Sister Yi, are you all right?" "Father, I'm fine." Qin Yining bowed to Qin Huaiyuan. When he saw official Chui and the other officials from the Ministry of Right stumbling off their horses, he said in a frightened voice, "Just now, little Wang Yi managed to shake off those Taitan assassins with great difficulty and hid me. Then, he led his own bodyguards to lure the assassins away. Taitan people are so brave. If something happened to little Wang Yi in our Dian, I'm afraid it would be difficult to explain to the Zhou Emperor." "Taitan people. Is what young Miss Qin said true? How did you determine that those were Taitan assassins?" Chui Wenqing asked with a nervous expression. Qin Yining's face was pale and his eyes seemed to be filled with tears. He explained, "I've seen some Taitan people in Liang City and heard some Taitan language. Just now, those people chased us anxiously and shouted and cursed in Taitan language. Those people were tall and big, different from us Dian people. Thus, I was able to determine that. The situation is really complicated." "Marquis of Anping, what do you think about this?" Chui Wenqing and the other officials from the Ministry of Rights were so tired that their bodies hurt. Not only were the skin on their legs scraped, but they had been running without water all this time. Their thighs were about to turn into paste. When they heard that this matter involved the relationship between the Taitan, Dian, and Dezhou, how could they make a decision? Qin Huaiyuan thought for a moment and made a prompt decision. "This matter still needs the Emperor to make a decision. Even if we chase after them, we won't be able to help. Order the soldiers to follow the original route and chase after them. It's more important for us to return to the capital immediately." Everyone nodded when they heard this and left a dozen people to escort these officials. The rest of the people followed the original route that Pang Xiao took to leave the capital. However, when they came to the capital, they ran at full speed for more than 12 hours. Everyone was so tired on the way back, so they naturally couldn't not eat or sleep. Their speed was also slower than when they came. They rode on horses for a while until dawn, when they came to a small town and commandeered several carriages. Including the rest in between, they didn't return to the capital until the morning of the third day. At this time, Peng Zhao's group had probably already left Xihua City. Along the way, because of the difference between men and women, Qin Yining was placed in a separate carriage and didn't have a chance to talk to Qin Huaiyuan in detail. It wasn't until they entered the capital that Qin Huaiyuan sent the rest of the officials back home to rest. He himself had to enter the palace to report to the emperor. Stopping the carriage halfway, the father and daughter pair got off the carriage and walked to a place with a wide view. Only then did they have time to talk. "Sister Yi, did the Titan really come to kill little Wang Yi?" Qin Yining couldn't help but smile when she heard this. "I knew that the words I said that day couldn't be completely believed by father." Qin Huaiyuan had an expression of as expected and said with a smile, "Although Guizhang Chao colluded with the Titan, he did it for his own benefit. He didn't lead a wolf into the house." Madame Chao already told the emperor about that matter. Guizhang Chao should be nervous right now. He definitely wouldn't let the Titan assassinate little Wang Yi at this time and cause more trouble for himself. Father is wise. It's just as you said. Qin Yining explained how Pang Xiao arranged for her people to pretend to be Titan assassins. Naturally, she avoided mentioning the matter between Pang Xiao and her. However, Qin Huaiyuan's expression still had some complicated and understanding after listening. After Qin Yining finished speaking, he pondered for a moment and asked, "Sister Yi, what do you think of little Wang Yi?" Qin Yining was originally waiting for Qin Huaiyuan to analyze what to do next with a serious expression. She didn't expect her father to ask about Pang Xiao. When she thought of that person, she felt uncomfortable. She forced herself to be calm and said, "There's nothing to think about." "Nothing?" Qin Huaiyuan smiled and pointed at the red bean bracelet on her wrist. "When I saw you off that day, father didn't remember you having this on your wrist. But when I found you, you were already wearing it." Chapter 166. When Qin Huaiyuan saw his daughter like this, how could he not understand? Pang Xiao was born with such appearance, boldness, and strategy. He could be said to be a hero who could bring peace to the world with a pen and settle the universe with a horse with martial arts. He was willing to treat Qin Yining with care and had saved her many times. Qin Yining was not a cold-hearted person. How could she be indifferent? After carefully looking at his daughter, Qin Huaiyuan could not help but shake his head with a smile. No wonder a hero like Pang Xiao could not pass this hurdle. Forget it. I won't ask about what happened between the two of you. You are a smart child. You should know what you are doing. Qin Yining was surprised, but also a little surprised. Father, you don't object. Object to what? He is a fierce and ambitious person. He is worthy of you. However, there are simply too many barriers between the two of us. Qin Huaiyuan naturally understood what he meant. He smiled with his hands behind his back. Let's not talk about other things for now. Let's talk about Pang Zhongjing's death. If he was really a person who would not let go of this grudge, I would not be standing here alive right now. Back then, I did try to drive a wedge between them, but little Wang Yi must be clear in his heart. If the Emperor of Northern Ji had not been suspicious of Pang Zhongjing, he would not have used this as a pretext to make a fuss. And perhaps you don't know little Wang Yi's background. When Qin Yining heard this, he looked at Qin Huaiyuan curiously. Qin Huaiyuan said, Pang Zhishi's mother was from the Yao clan. She was a servant girl in the Pang family. Pang Zhongjing once had sex after drinking and forced the Yao clan. Pang Zhongjing's wife was extremely jealous. When she found out that Pang Zhongjing had taken a fancy to the Yao clan, she did not wait to be promoted to concubine. In order to prevent the birth of a concubine son, she secretly sent people to assassinate them. Fortunately, the Yao clan was smart and deceived them. Pang Zhongjing never knew when the Yao clan he had sex with was sent away, so he did not know that she was later pregnant and that their family ruined his plans. Until his death, Pang Zhongjing did not know that he had a bloodline in this world. That is to say, young Prince Pang has no feelings for his biological father and official mother. Qin Huaiyuan nodded. And he was forced to join the army when he was young. Qin Huaiyuan sighed and said, "How do you think he became a murderous god who kills people step by step?" He had originally followed his maternal grandfather's family and his birth mother to live a peaceful life in a small town. His maternal grandfather's family had used the money that Yao Shi had brought back to open a small restaurant. Although it could not be considered wealthy, they did not have to worry about food and clothing. However, the emperor of the Zhou dynasty, Li Qitian, was working hard to overthrow the tyranny of northern Ji. He used Pang Zhongjing's former subordinates to find the Yao clan. When he saw Pang Zhishi, he was able to confirm his identity just by looking at his appearance. At that time, Emperor Zhou was just the leader of a peasant uprising. He didn't have much rallying power, so he forced Pang Zhishi into the army. He used threats and promises to coax Pang Zhishi into joining the army. In fact, he just wanted to use the banner of revenge for the country's general to recruit soldiers. When young Prince Pang joined the army, he was directly kidnapped from his home. At first, he was unwilling, but later, he slowly accepted the reality. So, he did not join the army of his own accord. It turned out that he had such a past. A 15-year-old boy who had been living a peaceful life was suddenly told that he was the descendant of General Pang and was pulled into the army by the emperor of the Zhou dynasty. What he had to face was definitely not just a bloody battlefield, but also a lot of deceit. Li Qitian used Pang Zhongjing's banner to overthrow northern Ji. In fact, he did not care about Pang Zhao's life or death. In that kind of environment, Pang Zhao must have experienced a lot of hardships in order to survive. He learned martial arts, learned how to kill, and learned how to deceive. He trained himself in one battle after another, learned the art of war, bought people's hearts, and developed his own power. Step by step, he reached a point where even the emperor of the Zhou dynasty did not dare to kill him directly. Instead, the emperor of the Zhou dynasty wanted to give him the title of the only king with a different surname in Zhou. The hardships in this. Just by analyzing it like this, she felt that it could crush people. However, Pang Zhao had already done it. He had never received a day of fatherly love, and he had no feelings for his biological father. However, his fate was controlled by his background. Qin Yining suddenly understood what Qin Huaiyuan meant. Pang Zhao probably had no feelings for his biological father at all. Perhaps he even resented him. In addition to the fact that he had no choice, his biological mother had also suffered a lot of grievances. Therefore, Pang Zhao could calmly and objectively think about what happened back then. That was why he did not arbitrarily sentence Qin Huaiyuan to death. After some analysis, Qin Yining inexplicably felt a lot more relaxed. I didn't expect father to know so much about little Wang Yi. He has feelings for my daughter. Of course, I will investigate it clearly, Qin Huaiyuan said bluntly. I can't just watch him plot against my daughter for revenge. Qin Yining's face flushed, but her heart was jumping with joy. She trusted her father's ability. If her father said so, it meant that Pang Zhao did not get close to her for revenge. He was sincere to her. However, if she did not consider the family feud and national hatred, she could not help but sigh. What was the use of thinking so much now? She should just let nature take its course. Before Pang Zhao left, he especially told her that he would take care of everything. Qin Yining did not realize that she had subconsciously accepted Pang Zhao's possessive desire for her. She also accepted the fact that Pang Zhao wanted to marry her after everything was settled. Qin Huaiyuan pondered for a moment before he said, "You should return to the residence." I've already arranged for Miss Tang to return to the residence. Just say that I'm the one who's sending you off. You don't have to take what others say to heart. Yes. Qin Yining nodded and said, Father, let's get in the carriage. I will ride White Cloud back. Qin Huayuan nodded. He watched as Qin Yining took the reins from his attendant and looked at the handsome white horse. He sighed again with mixed feelings. His plan is really unparalleled. Yes, he has also given us a big gift. Qin Yining mounted the horse. She did not understand Qin Huayuan's double entendre. Qin Huayuan shook his head and did not say the rest of his words. Go back. Yes. Father, daughter will go back first. Qin Yining rode White Cloud back to the estate in a light mood. Qin Huayuan stood in the same place and thought for a moment. Then he went to see the emperor and told him that the Titan had assassinated Prince Zhongshuan and that Prince Zhongshuan had escaped from Dian. He was furious. When the emperor heard this, he did not say anything. The next day, Qin Huayuan reported this matter to the emperor during the imperial court meeting. He asked the emperor to thoroughly investigate how the Titan had found out the time and route of Pang Zhao's departure. He concluded that there must be a Titan spy among the people who knew about Prince Zhongshuan's itinerary. The emperor was originally afraid of Guozhang Chao. In addition, Chao Yuqing presented the evidence that Guozhang Chao had secretly colluded with the Titan princess. She also presented the possible consequences of the Titan's pursuit of Pang Zhao. The combination of these three factors made the emperor so angry that he reprimanded Guozhang Chao during the imperial court meeting. The Minister of Personnel, Wang Yuxian, was a capable student of Guozhang Chao. 10 days later, the emperor found an excuse to remove him from his position. In less than half a month, one of Guozhang Chao's arms was cut off. His position in the imperial court was greatly reduced. Qin Huayuan was a meritorious official in the peace talks and the capable official who impeached Guozhang Chao. In addition, he always had a good reputation. At this time, he was in the limelight. Qin Yining looked at the Zhaoyun Agency's account book while listening to Master Zhong talk about the secret information. He could not help but frown. Seeing her like this, Master Zhong stopped smiling and asked, Boss, is there something wrong? Qin Yining shook his head and said, I always feel that things are not so simple. The Chao family has been able to stand for so many years. They are not people who can be easily bullied. I'm afraid that they still have some tricks up their sleeves. Just as Qin Yining expected, at this time, in the imperial study, the empress had her head bowed and was sobbing as she murmured in a delicate voice. This concubine's maternal family has very few male descendants, and my father only has a few disciples. If he became a poor official, others would not laugh at our Chao family for not having a successor. We only ask for more care. However, Your Majesty has removed Wang Yuxian from her position. Isn't this making things difficult for this concubine's father? This concubine has been laughed at by Consort Shu and Consort Xiang. These days, this concubine hasn't been able to eat or sleep well. Look, this concubine has wrinkles at the corners of her eyes. Chapter 167. In the emperor's heart, the empress was his goddess, a cinnabar mole in his heart. He had long cherished the empress to his bones and could not bear to see her being wronged. Even though the emperor was wary of Chao Guozhang and was dissatisfied with some of Chao Guozhang's actions, that had nothing to do with his beloved empress. Darling, don't be sad, Zhen's heart hurts. The emperor hugged the empress and gently rocked her like he was coaxing a child. Zhen scolded Wang Yuxian because he was not good. It has nothing to do with Guozhang. How come Xu Fei and Xiang Pin dare to laugh at you because of this? The Hogong meddling in politics, do they not want to live? Emperor. The empress softly leaned on the emperor's shoulder. Qinxia has monopolized emperor's favor since entering the palace. They are naturally jealous, Chinchilla can understand. But Emperor is in the prime of his life, Chinchilla is gradually becoming a faded flower. Chinchilla is afraid that one day, Emperor will find a new lover and not want Chinchilla. As the Empress spoke, tears fell from the corners of her eyes and dripped onto the Emperor's dragon robe, staining it a few times. The Emperor's large hand held the Empress' slender waist and his other hand gently stroked her long hair. How can that be? We are the one who is truly old, but you are still so young and beautiful, just like when we first met. The Empress shook her head and sat up straight with her hands on the Emperor's shoulders. She looked deeply at him. Emperor, how can you say this? You are the true dragon, son of heaven, long life. Also, you are not old at all. After using Tianjizi's elixir, you are even more energetic. Chinchilla is. She lowered her head with a red face. The Empress' bashful appearance and certain words made the Emperor feel light. He did feel that after taking the elixir, he was even more vigorous and confident that he could live to 100 years old. The Empress hesitated and said, Emperor, Chinchilla is not the true dragon, son of heaven like you. I have purple energy to protect my body. Chinchilla is old. Look, the corners of Chinchilla's eyes. The Empress gently caressed her bright and beautiful face and said, Your Majesty, this concubine knows a prescription to retain one's youthful appearance. Tianjizi told this concubine a few days ago, but the primer is somewhat difficult to obtain. Seeing that the Empress was no longer harping on the matter of him punishing Wang Yuxian, the Emperor finally let out a sigh of relief. He was happy that she had changed the topic, so he asked, Euro, what kind of medicine did you say it was? I am rich in the 4 seas, and the world is mine. As long as it exists in the human world, as long as you want it, I will get it for you. The Empress blushed and said in a tender voice, The Tianjizi said that the medicine that your concubine is going to take is rare. In fact, it's not rare. We have it in the capital. It's just that I'm afraid it'll be a bit difficult to use. Tell me, I will settle it for you. The Emperor enjoyed seeing the Empress act coquettishly when she asked him for something. It greatly satisfied his sense of accomplishment. The Empress' voice became gentler, Your Majesty, the Tianjizi said that your concubine needs the exquisite heart, beautiful bones, and fragrant flesh of a Yin beauty born in the year of Ji Mao, the month of Wu Qin, and the day of Dingyu to be used as the primer. Oh. The Emperor was a bit surprised. He didn't expect that the primer would require a living person. But after thinking for a bit, he smiled and said, This isn't difficult. I will send out a document and search everywhere for a person born in this year. Yin beauty. Then you need a beautiful woman. Seeing that the Emperor had agreed, the Empress felt that there was hope. She anxiously pulled on his sleeve and said, Actually, the Tianjizi has already calculated who this person is. It's just that your concubine is afraid of making things difficult for your Majesty, so I don't dare to say it. The Emperor laughed and said, You clever little girl, tell me. No matter who it is, I will find that person to use as a primer to retain your youthful appearance. Then your concubine will tell you. Your Majesty, you can't be angry or misunderstand me. What? Do I know this person? Yes. The Empress nodded and said, This person is not someone else. She is from the Qin clan, the legitimate daughter of the Marquis of Anping. She was born in the year of Ji Mao, the month of Wu Qin, and the day of Dingyu. Her birthday is on the 5th day of the 6th month. If your Majesty doesn't believe me, you can ask someone to calculate it. When the Emperor heard this, he was silent for a moment. After a while, he said, Qin Meng only has this one daughter. I'm afraid it's not appropriate to ask him to offer his daughter as a primer. The Emperor naturally still remembered that in the Duke Ding's mansion, Sun Yu refused to give him his brain and tried to commit suicide. He felt a bit conflicted when he thought of such a similar thing. The Empress frowned in grievance. Your Majesty, what are you saying? The world is yours, and the people in the world are also yours. No matter what, Qin Mang is still your subject. Isn't there a saying, if the monarch wants the subject to die, the subject has no choice but to die? Your Majesty didn't want him to die, you just want his daughter. If he doesn't offer her up, then he has a rebellious heart. These words were very skillful. Every sentence poked at the Emperor's untouchable weakness. The Emperor was in a high position. The first thing he cared about was his unshakable godlike status, and the second thing he cared about was the loyalty of his subjects. Wasn't the existence of the Qin-Tian alliance today because he wanted the lives of the people of the Duke Ding's mansion to rebel? He wanted Sun Yu to sacrifice himself for the country, and Sun Yu dared to commit suicide. He wanted the lives of the men of the Sun family to appease de Zhou's anger, and the remaining women of the Sun family dared to create the Qin-Tian alliance to rebel and even dared to assassinate him. He was the monarch of a country, the ruler of thousands of people. Could it be that he couldn't make a decision for such a small matter? Moreover, the Zhaoyun agency of the Sun family was now in the hands of the Qin clan. Although Chao Yuqing had investigated and confirmed that the Qin clan had nothing to do with the Qin-Tian alliance. In the end, the Qin clan was the granddaughter of the Qin-Tian alliance's leader. Qin Mang was truly loyal, and he only had this one bloodline. But so what? His imperial power absolutely couldn't be infringed upon or despised by anyone. The Empress saw the Emperor's uncertain expression. With her understanding of him over the years, she could already guess what was going on. She wrapped her arms around the Emperor's neck and used her soft body to rub against him. Your Majesty, could it be that you don't want Qinxie to stay young forever, to accompany and serve your Majesty like this? Could it be that your Majesty doesn't like Qinxie? The Empress's rubbing successfully attracted the Emperor's attention. He immediately became restless. Tian Jizi's elixir could make him vigorous until he was 100 years old. If the Empress became old early, how could his life have any fun? Moreover, his little darling only wanted a primer to stay young. It wasn't an excessive request. Thinking of this, the Emperor smiled and said, "Fine, I'll do as you say." Who told Jin to love you? Later, Jin will think of a way to get her. When the Empress heard this, she smiled and kissed the Emperor. Qinxie thanks the Emperor for his love. The Emperor's large hands wandered around her body. You want to thank Jin? What are you going to use to thank me? Your Majesty. The soft voice was captivating. The Emperor swept the memorials on the table to the ground and pressed the Empress on top of it. At this time, the guards and eunuchs standing in front of the imperial study felt embarrassed. Among them, there was a young eunuch whose face turned red. He quietly moved a few steps away, as if he couldn't hear the sound inside. When the eunuch saw his little disciple acting like this, he couldn't help but laugh. Xiao Yuzi, what's wrong with you? Why are you twisting around? Are you attracted to maggots? Xiao Yuzi's face turned red. Master, I want to go to the toilet. You little monkey, you can't do it like this. Let me tell you, there will be a time for you to learn in the future. If you want to go to the toilet, then go quickly. Don't make a fool of yourself here. Xiao Yuzi scratched the back of his head and quickly ran away. The guards and eunuchs couldn't help but laugh. Xiao Yuzi quickly ran to the toilet. Seeing that no one was paying attention to him, he hurriedly avoided people and wrote a note. He used the old method to send it to the Eastern Palace. When Yu Qiyan was eating lunch, he received the note from a young eunuch. When he saw it, his face turned white and he almost knocked over the bowl of porridge in front of him. He was first shocked, then angry. He was so angry that his entire body trembled as he muttered, "Demon Empress, Demon Empress. She deserves to die." The Marquis of Anping's residence was in a celebratory mood these 2 days. Chao Guozhang's disciple was accused and stripped of his position as the Minister of Appointments. Chao Guozhang was also reprimanded by the emperor for not doing his job well. On the other hand, Qin Huaiyuan, who facilitated the successful peace talks and impeached Chao Guozhang, was a meritorious official and was greatly rewarded. These days, rewards were continuously sent to the residents. From gold, silver, and jade wares to snacks that the emperor thought were delicious, he didn't forget to send a portion to the family Qin. This kind of honor was truly something that many people couldn't achieve in several lifetimes. Old Madam was so happy that she couldn't close her mouth. She only felt that her eldest son really gave her a lot of face. The Chao family's loss made her not so warm to Chao Yuqing. On the contrary, the Qin Yining, who was able to enter Prince Zhongshuan's eyes, was valued by Old Madam. Even the Sun clan's status rose as a result. Now, in the entire capital, who didn't know that Prince Zhongshuan would rather throw away a lot of money for the sake of the family Qin's fourth young miss? He would rob the execution ground and give her a residence. Even when they encountered Titan assassins, he didn't forget to bring the Qin fourth young miss onto the back of a horse and protect her as they escaped. The womenfolk of the 8 great families who saw Pang Xiao at Ning Garden that day had truly seen Pang Xiao's charm up close. When they chatted with their close friends in private, they would mention a thing or two. Like this, 1 spread to 10, 10 spread to 100. Now, who in the upper-class circle didn't know that Pang Xiao was extraordinarily handsome? Since Great Zhou and Great Yan had reached a peace treaty, they had become friendly nations. Naturally, friendly nations could marry each other openly. Such a handsome man was also a hero with illustrious military achievements. In his hand, he also held the commander's seal of the 100,000 Tiger Army. He was truly awe-inspiring. Such a great hero was naturally yearned for by unmarried women. It was said that such an iron-blooded man actually fell in love with a woman. That kind of devotion was even more desirable and enviable. Qin Yining became the object of envy of all the Dayan noblewomen. At the same time, he also became a bridge for Old Madam to curry favor with Prince Zhongshuan. However, if she couldn't curry favor with him, in the future, Qin Yining would become a concubine or concubine in Prince Zhongshuan's manor. It would also be of great help to the family Qin. Therefore, Qin Yining was kept by Old Madam's side these 2 days to accompany her all day. When Qiu Lu came to Xiaishao Garden, Qin Yining took the opportunity to say that he needed to change clothes and called Qiu Lu to the corridor to talk. "Why are you here now? Is something the matter?" Chapter 168. Qin Yining was very surprised. What kind of person couldn't come to her openly and wanted her to meet secretly at Master Zhong's residence? She slowly walked a few steps along the veranda and then sat sideways on the chair beside her. She propped her head up with her hands and pondered. Since this person could find Master Zhong's residence, he must know her daily whereabouts very well. He knew that it was common for her to go to Master Zhong's residence to discuss business and would not arouse suspicion. Since the other party didn't come to find her, it was enough to show that their upcoming conversation must be secret. Since Master Zhong could send someone to invite her, it meant that this person was completely trustworthy. Qin Yining thought about it and felt that the most likely person to do this was maternal grandmother. She hadn't seen maternal grandmother since she learned of maternal grandmother's identity as the leader of the Qin Tian alliance. Could it be that maternal grandmother was looking for her? Thinking of this, Qin Yining hurriedly ordered people to prepare the carriage. She went to inform Old Madam and hurriedly left with Ji Yun and Bing Tang. Not long after, they arrived in front of the Zhong family's residence. She got off the carriage with the help of a maidservant. The doorman immediately welcomed Qin Yining warmly as usual. "Boss is finally here." Just now, the head shopkeeper was waiting for Boss at the door for a while. Presumably, there is an important business to discuss. This little one wishes boss's business to be smooth and prosperous. Thank you for your auspicious words. Qin Yining smiled gently and slightly glanced sideways. Ji Yun immediately took out a pouch from her sleeve and gave a handful of money to the doorman. The doorman repeatedly thanked her and respectfully led Qin Yining to the study. Master Zhong had already received the servant's reply and went to the study's courtyard door to welcome them. "Boss, you're here." Master Zhong smiled as usual and said, "A big businessman came from the south. He has a big business to ask boss to make the decision, so he invited you here." Qin Yining smiled and nodded. "I'm from the boudoir and my knowledge is shallow. I just came to listen and learn a thing or two from the head shopkeeper." Master Zhong quickly cupped his hands. I wouldn't dare. The servants of the Zhong family who were following behind him started to admire their master. This was the legitimate daughter of the Marquis of Anping, the person whom the Prince Zhongshuan of Dezhou had taken a fancy to. Even she was so polite to Master Zhong, which was enough to show how powerful his master was. Master Zhong waved his hand to dismiss the servant. Qin Yining also instructed Ji Yun and Bing Tang, "You guys stand guard outside and don't let anyone come near." "Yes." Ji Yun and Bing Tang nodded seriously. Qin Yining followed Master Zhong up the stairs and into the study. Master Zhong's study wasn't as spacious as Qin Huaiyuan's study, but it was still clean and elegant. On the bookshelves were various classics and history books, and on the desk were some account books. At this moment, there was a tall young man dressed in gray standing by the window with his back facing them. He seemed to be admiring the tall bamboos outside the half-open window. Qin Yining frowned in confusion. The person who came wasn't her maternal grandmother. Why did this person's figure look so familiar? When the person turned around and saw the person's face, Qin Yining's eyes widened in shock. She hurriedly bowed. "This subject greets your highness. I didn't know it was your highness the crown prince who had graced us with his presence. I hope your highness will forgive me for my rudeness." Yu Yen hurriedly reached out to support her. She looked at her attentively. "Quickly get up. There's no need to be so courteous. You are the daughter of the Grand Preceptor, which is equivalent to this consort's junior sister. There's no need to be so formal." Qin Yining stood still and bowed her head. There is a difference between a ruler and a subject. Etiquette cannot be ignored. You've always been so respectful. Yu Yen laughed bitterly. The matter that day was this consort's fault. I didn't think things through and said those words in front of everyone. I hope you won't take it to heart. Qin Yining knew that he was talking about the day she had been forced to go to the peace talks. The crown prince had hurriedly come to see her off and said that the position of crown princess would definitely be hers. Her brazen confession that day had indeed attracted some criticism. The most important thing was that it would cause trouble for her father. Therefore, she had sternly rejected him. She didn't expect that the crown prince would still take that matter to heart. Your highness is too serious. If this subject's daughter has offended your highness in any way, I hope your highness will forgive me. You're too kind. Yu Yen sighed. That day, this consort was indeed listening to others and didn't think things through. It won't happen again in the future. When Master Zhong saw that the crown prince was so careful with Qin Yining, he understood a bit more. Because he had announced that he was going to discuss business, it wasn't appropriate for him to hide. He could only go to the side room on the other side and leave this place to the two of them. Qin Yining led the crown prince to a seat and sat down next to him. She said, "Does the crown prince have any urgent instructions for this visit?" Yu Yen finally remembered the purpose of her visit. She hurriedly said, "Young Lady Qin, the demon empress wants to kill you. You have to be careful." Her words were like splashing pearls as she said, "My people just received news that the demon empress was acting coquettishly in front of imperial father. She asked for a primer to preserve her youthful looks. She said that Tianjizi said that she needed the exquisite heart, beautiful bones, and fragrant flesh of a woman from a certain date of birth. Tianjizi calculated that the person was you. Imperial father has already given his permission. I think that with Imperial Father's way of doing things, he will definitely make a move on you in the next 2 days. You should quickly run away." Qin Yining was flabbergasted. Her face gradually lost color. She knew that the demon empress would definitely take revenge on her. Ever since her father ascended to the position of imperial tutor, he had already formed various grudges with the Chao clan. Ever since the demon empress caused eldest cousin to commit suicide by hitting his head against a pillar, she caused the Sun clan to be destroyed. In addition to Chang Chunyuan's trip, the demon empress was slapped in the face. With her willfulness, she had waited until now to make a move. Qin Yining had to praise her steadiness. However, she never expected that the demon empress would actually want to kill her. Furthermore, she used such a bloody method. She really knew how to apply what she had learned. De Zhou wanted Sun Yu's brain to be used as a primer, and the demon empress immediately wanted her flesh and bones to be used as a primer. Wasn't she afraid that she would incite an incapable ruler and attract the curses of the world again? That's right, the demon empress didn't care at all. The emperor was the ruler of the world. As long as she had the emperor's protection, wouldn't the demon empress be able to do whatever she wanted? To an incapable ruler, everyone in the world was probably his private property. They were all like pigs and dogs that could be slaughtered at will. Wasn't there a saying that if the ruler wanted his subjects to die, they had no choice but to die? She was just a little girl's life. In the eyes of an incapable ruler, it wasn't even worth mentioning. Back then, the Duke Ding residence was such a big family, but he could destroy it just like that. What could she do? Your Highness, is this true? Qin Yining tried his best to remain calm, but his voice was still a little hoarse. Yu Qiyan nodded solemnly. This prince arranged for someone to be on duty in the imperial study. He heard it with his own ears. Why didn't you tell my father about this matter? Instead, you hurriedly came to tell me. Qin Yining's clear eyes looked at him. Yu Qiyan was stunned. Then, his face turned red. I was so anxious that I forgot. He didn't even refer to himself as this prince. Qin Yining saw him like this and couldn't help but shake his head and laugh. It seemed like the crown prince really didn't have any talent in matters of the imperial court. It's good that your highness came to tell me. If this matter was told to my father, I'm afraid it would have a bad influence. Chapter 169. When Qin Yining heard this, he couldn't help but smile bitterly. At this time, where can I escape to? If the emperor decrees that the family Qin can't hand me over, how do you think the emperor will deal with the family Qin? This, AI. What should we do? Yu Qiyan was very clear about his father's personality. Just like in the Dinggua manor, Sun Yu, a man of integrity, chose to die in such a stubborn way because he refused to submit to the threat of the Dezhou emperor. If it were him, he would only be filled with admiration and praise, and would definitely take good care of the Sun family. But what did his father do? When he thought about how the Sun family was Qin Yining's maternal family, and how Qin Yining's maternal grandfather, uncle, cousin, and even his young nephew had all been beheaded, and the one who caused all of this was his father, Yu Qiyan felt a wave of shame, and his face quickly turned red. In the eyes of outsiders, he was the high and mighty crown prince, the only heir to the emperor, the future son of heaven, and the natural favorite. But only Yu Qiyan knew that the identity of the imperial family didn't bring him glory, but shackles and burdens. Because of his father's stupidity, he didn't even dare to confidently pursue the woman he loved. And the woman he loved, his father wanted to crush her and feed her to the empress. Qin Yining saw that the crown prince's fair face had already turned purple, and he could already guess the gist of it. He didn't discuss this matter with him anymore, and bowed sincerely. "Thank you for your righteous help today, Your Highness. If Your Highness hadn't told me in advance, I'm afraid I would have been sacrificed by the family." Yu Qian saw her bow and hurriedly supported her, saying with shame, "Miss Qin, there's really no need for this. I'm really incompetent. When I received the news, I could only tell you what happened, but I couldn't think of an appropriate solution. But please don't worry, Miss Qin. When I go back, I'll contact my father. As long as he gives the order, I will definitely ask him to take back his order. I won't let you die in vain. I appreciate Your Highness's good intentions. However, this subject's daughter is free to make her own decision. Your Highness, it would be best if you don't act rashly for the time being." Her complexion was slightly pale, but her brows were relaxed and her eyes were clear and calm. At a glance, one could tell that she had already calmed down from her panic. Last time, Yu Qian had anxiously caught up with the peace talks team. He only wanted to confess to her and let her know his feelings, but she rejected him in front of everyone. After that, Yu Qian thought about the whole story and the relationship between them. He knew that this woman was definitely not an ordinary girl. She was extremely smart and definitely worthy of being the daughter of a wise Panin. Now that he saw how calm and confident she was in the face of danger, her calmness and composure even infected him. Yu Qian asked himself, if one day someone suddenly wanted to grind his flesh and blood for others to eat, he would not be as calm as Qin Yining after hearing the news. A feeling of admiration arose spontaneously, followed by an uncontrollable emotion. Like a surging tide, a sentence that had been lingering in Yu Qian's mind for a long time blurted out. "Miss Qin, are you and Prince Zhongshuan really engaged? Do I not have another chance?" Qin Yining's beautiful face suddenly flushed red. Even her ears turned red. "Your Highness, marriage is naturally decided by my parents. How could it be up to me to decide who I want to marry? Your Highness, please don't say that again." Yu Qian looked at her beautiful face that was dyed red. For a moment, he only felt that she was adorable from head to toe. There was no part of her that wasn't exquisite and pleasing to the eye. She was just standing in front of him with her head down, but it made him feel as if he was in a beautiful landscape painting. It was as if he could hear the birds and smell the fragrance of flowers, making him unable to extricate himself. "All right, I understand." Yu Qian smiled. Since she said this, he only needed to convince Qin Huayuan. Although his imperial father was a bit shabby, his own character could be guaranteed. "You still have things to take care of. I should also go back, lest people become suspicious if I stay here for too long." "Yes. Many thanks to Your Highness for today." Qin Yining bowed again. Yu Qian waved his hand and stared at her for a moment. Then, he reluctantly put on a light blue luxurious cloak and walked out. Master Zhong was already waiting at the door and carefully sent the crown prince off. He even made a regretful expression that the business deal had not been concluded, so no one would be suspicious. Qin Yining sat at the table and looked at the dark green tea leaves in the teacup, lost in thought. Not long later, Master Zhong anxiously ran in. "Boss, what should we do? What should we do? AI. That demon empress is simply not human. How can there be such a vicious woman in this world? She actually wants to use human flesh to retain her beauty. His Majesty is actually willing to listen. Boss, what should we do? We should quickly tell the Marquis of Onping and ask him to think of a solution." The study was not large, so Master Zhong naturally heard the conversation between Qin Yining and the Crown Prince clearly. Qin Yining shook his head. "Tell my father. With his position and perspective, he will either let me escape or sacrifice me. However, there are so many people in the family. Would my father sacrifice the entire family for me? For the sake of safety, I still have to personally take action. But what can we do? Master Zhong was so worried that his hair was about to turn white. Qin Yining stood up and paced back and forth. He analyzed, right now, the two countries are at peace, and it's not like the people of Duzhou forced us to do anything. His Majesty might not be able to find a suitable reason to hand me over to the Empress. Could it be that His Majesty can directly order my father to hand over your daughter for the Empress to eat? Otherwise, you are a traitor. With His Majesty's usual conduct, he might actually be able to do something like that. Master Zhong frowned and sighed. Qin Yining shook his head. If His Majesty really did that, then he would be completely shameless. Under the pressure of war, His Majesty can be shameless in order to save his own life. However, in a time of peace, His Majesty still wants to stabilize the country. I'm afraid that he also cherishes his reputation. Therefore, even if His Majesty wants to arrest me, he won't directly order me to do so. Instead, he will definitely accuse me of a crime and let me die as a matter of course. Crime? Boss's father was a meritorious official who facilitated the success of the peace talks. Boss also contributed a lot to the peace talks. Your entire family is a loyal official. If His Majesty wants to accuse you of a crime, I'm afraid it will be difficult. Qin Yining stopped walking and gripped the back of his chair tightly. In reality, His Majesty really did have a reason to accuse her of a crime. The Qin-Tian Alliance. Her maternal grandmother was the leader of the Qin-Tian Alliance. She was the main culprit who ordered the assassination of His Majesty. What if His Majesty used her identity as the granddaughter of the leader of the Qin-Tian Alliance to announce to the world that he was going to arrest her? As soon as this idea popped up, Qin Yining rejected it. The fact that His Majesty gave his most trusted silver-masked secret agent to Qin Huayuan was enough to show His Majesty's determination to deal with the Chao family. In order to keep Guozhang Chao in check, Qin Huayuan was his greatest weapon. If His Majesty wanted Qin Huayuan to deal with Guozhang Chao in peace, His Majesty definitely wouldn't shake the foundation of the family Qin. Therefore, if His Majesty wanted to eat His Majesty's flesh, His Majesty would only touch His Majesty's flesh. In that case, the Qin-Tian Alliance incident wouldn't be exposed. Otherwise, it would shake the foundation of the family Qin. Moreover, if the Qin-Tian Alliance incident wasn't exposed, it could be used as a bargaining chip by His Majesty to suppress the family Qin. Thinking of this, Qin Yining started walking again and muttered. Since His Majesty won't expose this incident, what excuse will he use? She thought left and right for a long time. Suddenly, she had a flash of inspiration. Master Zhong saw Qin Yining's eyes light up and knew that she had an idea. Boss, what do you plan to do? As long as you say the word, this old man will die 10,000 times without hesitation. Qin Yining shook her head and said with a smile, it's not that serious. However, this time, we still have to pay a little. Head shopkeeper, I'll have to trouble you to prepare 5,000 taels of silver for me. The sooner the better. It would be best if I could get it right now. When Master Zhong heard this, he didn't ask any more questions and immediately nodded. I'll go prepare it right away. For the latest novel updates, please visit the website. Chapter 170. 5,000 taels of silver was a large sum. For a high-ranking official like Qin Huayuan, his monthly salary was only 80 dong. If 5,000 taels of silver were given to the commoners for their daily necessities, they would not be able to spend it all in their lifetime. It was unknown how Master Zhong did it, but he rushed back in less than an hour. He gave Qin Yining banknotes from the Baotong Bank, which could be cashed in immediately in Dian and Dezhou. The smallest banknote was worth 100 taels of silver, while the largest was worth 1,000 taels of silver. It was a thick stack. Qin Yining put away the banknotes and said, "Put this on my personal account. Selfishly, I have spent a lot of money. Later, we will think of other ways to make money. Right now, it is more important to get through this difficult time." Yes, Master does not need to worry. As long as you are alive, everything else is a small matter. What's more, the Zhaoyun agency is Master's business. Master has the final say. Master Zhong gave an open-minded smile. Qin Yining smiled and nodded approvingly. Master Zhong's ability to make money was first class, but he was not a stingy person. It was clear that the former Ding general manor knew how to make good use of people. That day, her grandmother gave her the Zhaoyun agency. Although it caused her to offend the Chao clan because of Tang Meng, it also gave her a lot of help. Otherwise, she would only be an ordinary young lady now. Facing the demon empress who was about to eat her flesh, she was afraid that if she wanted to live, she would have to run away. Qin Yining sighed and pulled himself together. He said, "There is one more thing. Head shopkeeper, please order people to do it." As he spoke, he whispered a few words in Master Zhong's ear. Master Zhong heard this and his face immediately lit up. He clapped his hands and said, "Good, Master has a good plan. In this way, I am afraid that no matter what the Demon Empress says, the Emperor will not be able to find a suitable excuse to make a move on you." "Exactly. I will leave this matter to you, head shopkeeper. I need to leave the city and make a trip to the Immortal Lady Temple. There are still some things that need to be arranged." Master Zhong's eyes shone brightly as he looked at Qin Yining in admiration. "Boss, you're thinking of. Good. Boss is indeed unparalleled in scheming. It's my honor to follow you." "What are you talking about?" "It's my fortune to have a capable person like you by my side." Master Zhong's face was flushed red. He humbly cupped his hands and said, "I will instruct people to prepare the carriage. Master, please set off immediately. This matter should not be delayed. The sooner the better." "Don't worry, boss. Once you return from the Fairy Lady Temple, I will arrange the things that you instructed me to do. Then I'll leave it to you." After Qin Yining thanked Master Zhong, he hurriedly brought Bing Tang and Ji Yun into the carriage and rushed out of the city towards Fairy Temple. In the carriage, Qin Yining had been resting with his eyes closed. Ji Yun and Bing Tang already knew that the Demon Empress wanted to eat Qin Yining's flesh. At this moment, they were anxious and angry. Both of them had gloomy expressions. Bing Tang gritted his teeth and said, "Chao Yuro, that bitch. She will die a horrible death. I will curse her 18 generations of ancestors. Later, I will get a small person to stab her to death." "Stab her to death." Ji Yun took out a whistle from her collar and blew it with all her might. The whistle's sound was crisp and sharp, like a bird's cry. Qin Yining opened his eyes and looked curiously at Ji Yun. Not long after, a gray carrier pigeon landed on the open window. Ji Yun had already written a note with her eyebrows and carefully tied it to the carrier pigeon's leg. With a shake of her hand, the carrier pigeon flapped its wings and flew into the sky. Qin Yining asked, "Ji Yun wants to report this matter to Wang Yi." "Yes." Wang Yi instructed that if something big happens here, Miss, you must inform him immediately. Although Miss is resourceful, there are times when you are powerless. Although my martial arts are not weak, I am afraid that the other party will have evil intentions. It will be impossible to guard against it." Ji Yun answered carefully, as if she was afraid that Qin Yining would be angry about this matter. Qin Yining nodded his head in understanding. Pang Shao was also doing this for her own good. Besides, Qiyun was Pang Zhao's subordinate. Even if she was given to Qiyun, she would only be carrying out her mission. Her mission was to protect Qiyun's safety. She couldn't expect Qiyun to listen to her every command. Qin Yining closed his eyes again and leaned against the wall of the carriage to rest. The 4-hour journey passed by just like that. When they arrived at the Fairy Lady Temple, it was already 5 in the evening. The bright sunlight shone on the verdant mountains, making the Fairy Lady Temple, which was hidden in the greenery, feel like it was surrounded by celestial mountains. Qin Yining instructed the carriage driver to stop the carriage. Then, he pulled Bing Tang's hand and walked up the stairs. Ji Yun was originally worried that Qin Yining, a rich young lady, would not have the stamina to support herself. Who knew that Qin Yining did not even blush or pant when he reached the top of the mountain? Instead, it was Bing Tang who panted heavily with his hands on his waist. In front of the mountain gate, a little Taoist nun was holding a wooden bucket and a gourd ladle to splash water on the bluestone floor. Seeing that someone had come, she looked over and saw Bing Tang. She immediately cried out in surprise, "Immeasurable deity! Isn't this martial Uncle Jing Zhen?" Bing Tang laughed, "It's me. Is Shizhuan here?" "Yes, yes." The little Taoist nun glanced at Qin Yining and Ji Yun. She hastily gestured for them to enter. "Please follow this little Taoist." Compared to the bleak scene of the winter, the Immortal Lady Temple was now filled with greenery. The meditation rooms had also been renovated. It was a scene of prosperity. Qin Yining's group arrived at a side courtyard. After waiting for a while, the little Taoist nun smiled and led them to Immortal Lady Lu's residence. Qin Yining was extremely familiar with that courtyard. This was where Pang Zhao had been shot in the shoulder while trying to save him. As soon as she saw the familiar steps and courtyard walls, she couldn't help but think of Pang Zhao's handsome face. Immortal Lady Lu stood in the corridor. She clasped her hands and said, "Immeasurable deity for blessings and immeasurable deity, Miss Qin has graced us with your presence. I hope Miss Qin won't blame me for not coming out to greet you. Monastery head Lu is too polite. We haven't seen each other for many days. Monastery head is still so healthy." Qin Yining smiled and returned the greeting. Immortal Lady Lu smiled, "Thanks to Miss Qin, I am doing well." She glanced at Qin Yining's face and said, "However, Miss Qin seems to have encountered a bloody disaster recently." Bing Tang's and Ji Yun's expressions changed greatly. Bing Tang hurriedly ran forward and pulled Immortal Lady Lu's hand, saying, "Master, you are the most powerful. Please save Miss Qin." Immortal Lady Lu smiled and rubbed Bing Tang's head. "Jingzhen, why are you still so impatient? Since Miss Qin has come to the Immortal Lady Temple, you have already touched my fate." She stepped to the side and smiled, "I have already prepared tea. Would Miss Qin like to taste it together?" "Thank you, Monastery head." She turned around and ordered Bing Tang and Ji Yun, "You two stand guard outside." Bing Tang and Ji Yun immediately nodded. Immortal Lady Lu smiled knowingly and sent the people around her away. Qin Yining and Immortal Lady Lu entered the room and sat at the square table. Immortal Lady Lu picked up the Yixing clay teapot and personally poured Qin Yining a cup of tea. She smiled and said, "Miss Qin must have something to tell me today. Please speak frankly." Qin Yining smiled, "I will not beat around the bush in front of a straightforward person. Monastery head Lu is a genius. Even if I don't say it, you know that if I don't try my best this time, I am afraid I will lose my life." Then, he took out a stack of banknotes and placed it on the table. The thick stack of banknotes was in front of her. The banknote number of the Baotong Bank was so eye-catching. Immortal Lady Lu's eyes widened. "Miss Qin, what is the meaning of this?" Chapter 171. Fairy Lu's heart skipped a beat. Did Qin Yining really not know that she was Tian Jizi, or was he pretending not to know? After a long time, Fairy Lu finally tore her gaze away from the banknotes. She coughed lightly and pretended not to know with a smile. Miss Qin, you must be joking. That Tian Jizi is a Buddhist, and she is the famous iron-mouthed divine strategist. I am a Taoist, and my cultivation is still shallow. How can I bear such praise? Qin Yining smiled. Don't pretend not to know, Master Lu. You know, I want you to pretend to be Tian Jizi. Fairy Lu's eyelids twitched, and the corner of her mouth twitched. Asking her to pretend to be herself, and giving her so much money, this was a good deal. Seeing that Fairy Lu's eyes were fixed on the banknotes, Qin Yining guessed that something was wrong. He continued to persuade her. When Tian Jizi was in Dezhou, she disappeared after reading the fate of Emperor Zhou, Marquis Dingbei, and Prince Zhongshuan. In the past 2 years, there have been no rumors about her. Some say that she revealed the will of heaven and has already passed away. Others say that she completed the will of heaven and went deep into the mountains to cultivate. But I think, with Tian Jizi's talent, she must still be somewhere in the mortal world, observing the world's events. The reason I asked you to pretend to be the divine predictor is not that I want you to do anything excessive, but if someone really asks, you can give them an ambiguous answer and let them guess. First, Tian Jizi is a nun. If she wants to hide her identity, becoming a Taoist nun is the best way to cover it up. This explanation makes sense. Second, not many people have seen Tian Jizi. If you pretend to be Tian Jizi, you won't be exposed. Moreover, you and Tian Jizi are the same age. Thirdly, I'm not asking you to go out and do something big. I just want to borrow Tian Jizi's prestige to make some words more believable and thus save my little life. Master, you are a monk. Saving a life is better than building a 7-floor pagoda. Now that I'm in danger and someone wants to eat me alive, this is the only way I can think of. Qin Yining finished speaking and bowed to Fairy Lu. What Qin Yining didn't know was that when Lu heard her say, become a Taoist nun to hide her identity, she was already sweating. When she pretended to be a nun and escaped to Dian was to hide her identity. Because when she gave the diagnosis to Zhou Emperor Li Qitian, Marquis Dingbei Jiziyu, and Pang Shao, one of them was the reincarnation of the Ziwei Emperor star. The other 2 occupied the 7 kills and the Army Destroyer stars. Among the 3, there was also the reincarnation of the Greedy Wolf star, who was now in Taitan. However, after Dezhou was founded, the Ziwei Emperor star was not the Ziwei Emperor star. Li Qitian was the reincarnation of the 7 kills star, but he occupied the Ziwei Emperor star throne. When she heard the news, she ran away that night. She just didn't expect that Qin Yining would ask her to act as herself with a stack of banknotes. She even pointed out the key points of many problems at that time. Was she really a person with a great fortune and a great future? Did she have the insight of a wise person? Immeasurable God. Miss Qin, don't tell me you want to use the identity of Tian Jizi to swindle people outside. When Qin Yining heard this, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Master Lu, you're exaggerating. I'm just trying to save my life. Why would I swindle people? Lu Xiangu looked at the stack of banknotes awkwardly. She swallowed her saliva and asked, then can I ask, what kind of rumors do you want to spread outside? If it's just a small matter, you don't even need to use the name of Tian Jizi. Master Lu is very smart. This is indeed not a small matter. Someone wants to eat my heart, and they will eat it together with the bones and flesh of my body. They say that it can preserve one's youth. Now this person is about to make a move. In order to save my life, I can only announce that my fate is extremely good. I hope that I can escape this disaster. At this point, Qin Yining's face turned red. He said awkwardly, actually, before I came, I already ordered people to announce that fourth Miss Qin's fate is extremely good. As long as she's here, the Dian dynasty will be safe and stable. I also said that these are all Tianjizi's comments. It takes 4 hours to get here from the capital. I'm sure that all the idlers, helpers, and storytellers in the tea houses and restaurants are already talking about this matter. Looking at Lu Xiangu's stunned expression, Qin Yining also felt embarrassed. She had shamelessly boasted that she was a Dian amulet and Dian Ji Xiang. She couldn't do anything about it. The emperor would definitely think of a way to pin a crime on her. She had thought about it carefully. If she didn't want to shake the Qin family, she had to continue to win over Qin Huayuan to work for the emperor, and she had to openly capture her and feed her to the empress. The best excuse would be to accuse her of bringing disaster to the country and its people, a living evildoer. When the time came, even if the emperor captured her, he could say that he was getting rid of the demon and that it was a righteous act. Fortunately, she had already made plans and made the first move. This way, when the emperor was about to announce it, her news would have already been deeply ingrained in the hearts of the people. Even if the emperor didn't use such a method to mislead the people, with the public believing that she was a Dian amulet, the emperor would have to think twice before dealing with her. This kind of rumor that appeared out of nowhere was naturally not credible, so she let everyone know that this was the judgment of the Tianjizi. It was the same Tianjizi who had given the fortunes of Emperor Zhou, Marquis Dingbei, and Prince Zhongshuan. Using the name of the Tianjizi, it would be more convincing. But she couldn't find the Tianjizi at the moment. Even if she found her, she might not be willing to get involved in this kind of trouble. She also didn't know any trustworthy nuns. She had an idea and only thought of this money-grubbing Lu Xiangu. Lu Xiangu loved money as much as her life. For her, there was nothing that couldn't be solved with money. But even so, she was still a little worried that Lu Xiangu wouldn't agree. If she didn't agree, then she could only think of other ways. Could she use the excuse that the Tianjizi had given her a fortune and continue to travel the world? While Qin Yining's mind was full of thoughts and worries, Lu Xiangu stared at the money on the table, almost drooling. So much money, and it was from the Baotong Bank, which could be cashed instantly in both Dezhou and Dian. 5,000 taels, a total of 5,000 taels. She didn't need to give it to anyone else. It was all hers. This was too tempting for her. Anyway, it wasn't the first time she had asked others to use her name. She also knew who wanted to eat Qin Yining's meat. A few days ago, the Empress came in a hurry and put a box of treasures on her table with a bang. She directly ordered, "When I go back, I will tell His Majesty that you have calculated that the meat of that slut, the family Qin, can preserve one's youth. If His Majesty asks, just say that you were the one who deduced it." She didn't even have time to refute before she was defeated by the box of treasures. She didn't expect that Qin Yining would use the same method to defeat her. Fine, I'll agree. I'll earn double, save her life, and sell little Wang Yi a favor. Thinking of this, Lu Xiangu carefully counted the money twice, put it into her pocket with a smile, and patted it with satisfaction. Then she smiled and said, "Miss Qin really has sharp eyes. Actually, I am a Tianjizi." Her expression couldn't be more serious. Chapter 172. Even though it was already late, Qin Yining didn't dare to stay outside. He could only rush back to the capital. When he arrived at the city gates, it was already past Sushi. He used some silver and showed his identity before he could successfully enter the city. Because it was already curfew time, Qin Yining didn't dare to walk around the streets for fear of attracting trouble. He found a nearby inn and stayed for the night. He also arranged for Ji Yun to quietly return to Qin Huayuan's manor and secretly tell Qin Huayuan about her schedule today. He didn't want old madam and others to cause trouble when they saw that she didn't return home at night. She slept peacefully for the night. When she returned to the manor early the next morning, she saw Qin Huayuan's personal servant, Qi Tai, looking around at the door. When he saw Qin Yining's carriage, he hurriedly came forward to salute. "Fourth young lady, the Marquis ordered this lowly one to wait for you here. He asked you to go to the study as soon as you return home." Qin Yining said in surprise, "Why didn't father go to court today?" Qi Tai smiled and said, "The Marquis originally went, but the Empress wasn't feeling well. His Majesty had to stay in Fengyi Palace to take care of her, so he didn't go to court." Qin Yining smiled and nodded. Was the Empress not feeling well because she wanted to find an excuse to eat her flesh? Or was it because she couldn't eat her flesh? When they arrived at the study in the outer courtyard, they saw Qin Huayuan holding a wooden ladle with a long handle. He was scooping water from a wooden bucket and watering the flowers in the corridor. He was wearing a loose cotton robe that was neither new nor old. Because he was afraid of getting his sleeves wet, a large portion of his right sleeve was rolled up. "The Marquis, fourth young lady, has returned." Qi Tai saluted in front of the courtyard door. You can all withdraw first." Qin Huayuan put down the wooden ladle and took a handkerchief from a maidservant to wipe his hands. Then, he straightened out his sleeves. Qi Tai and the maidservants all withdrew. Qin Yining smiled and said, "It's good that father can rest at home today. You usually work too hard." "That's right. I still have to thank the Empress." Qin Huayuan laughed and said, "Why don't you accompany your father for a stroll in the garden?" Qin Yining nodded happily. "Sure." Qin Yining asked Bing Tang to go back to the Shuoran house to rest first. He only asked Song Lan to wait in front of the garden gate. After making the necessary arrangements, he and Qin Huayuan walked through the Chuehua gate and went all the way to the back garden. It was the season when the grass was long and the orioles were flying. The back garden was full of vitality. The white stone arch bridge above the lotus pond cast a reflection on the surface of the lake. The shore was covered with greenery, covering the rippling light. Taking a deep breath, one could smell the fragrance of the flowers and plants, and one's tense mood would relax. The father and daughter pair walked all the way to an open lawn. After making sure there was no one around to hide, Qin Huayuan finally spoke. "Last night, Ji Yun, who was by your side, rushed back and explained the situation to me. Sister Yi, why didn't you tell me yesterday? Is it because in your heart, father would sacrifice you to protect the safety of the family?" Qin Huayuan's straightforward words surprised Qin Yining. In her impression, Qin Huayuan was someone who liked to only say half of what he was saying. This left room for others to think, and also left room for himself to explain. She had always admired this way of speaking, and felt that this was the way of a smart person. For him to speak so bluntly today, it was clear that her actions had angered Qin Huayuan. Or, it could be said that this matter had stimulated Qin Huayuan. "Father, why do you say that?" Qin Yining said seriously, "I never thought that father would sacrifice me for the benefit of the family. It's just that this matter happened so suddenly, and father wasn't in the Fu at the time. If I waited for you to come back, I'm afraid that the Empress and Emperor's edict would have already been sent down. At that time, wouldn't I have no choice but to stretch out my neck and wait to be executed? Moreover, with father's status, there are hundreds of pairs of eyes watching whatever he does. If you were to get involved, it would be easy to alert the enemy. Unlike me, a little girl, many people look down on me. The Empress might also think that even if I knew something, I wouldn't be able to do anything. That's why no one was on guard." Qin Huayuan looked seriously into Qin Yining's eyes. Seeing that her tone was sincere and her eyes were clear, he knew that she wasn't being perfunctory. He nodded and said, "It's good that you don't think too much." To tell you the truth, if I suddenly received the imperial edict without knowing beforehand, I could only let you escape. If I received the news first, I'm afraid that I would have done the same thing as you. I'm father's daughter, so I naturally think the same way as father. Qin Yining laughed lightly. Qin Huaiyuan saw that Qin Yining didn't seem to care that the empress was going to eat her. She was still as steady as ever, without the slightest trace of panic. He loved and cherished her even more. Your method is very good. After I received the news last night, I've been paying attention to the situation in the palace. Although I didn't receive any accurate information, the emperor didn't attend court today. It wasn't because the empress was unwell, but because the empress was angry and the emperor wanted to stay behind to coax her. Connecting this to the situation in the past 2 days, it's clear why the empress was angry. No matter what method His Majesty uses to take your life, your safety can be guaranteed for the time being. Qin Huaiyuan stopped walking and broke off a thin willow branch to play with in his hand. Qin Yining copied Qin Huaiyuan and plucked a willow leaf. She put it to her lips and blew it like a whistle. The sound of the leaf shaking startled the birds and caused Qin Yining to laugh. Qin Huaiyuan saw that she didn't have any hazy expression and relaxed a lot. His tightly knitted brows also relaxed a bit. Father and daughter were silent for a moment. Qin Yining threw away the leaf and said, "Father doesn't need to take this matter to heart. You have a clear conscience. But now that you've seen the emperor clearly, you need to make some plans for yourself in the future. If he's a wise ruler, if he's willing to work hard to govern, even if he's incompetent, it's worth it for us to serve him until we die. But he's a fatuous ruler." Qin Yining raised her head and looked Qin Huaiyuan in the eyes, to say something disrespectful. Father is burying father by following such a fatuous ruler. This kind of person isn't worth father's blood. Father shouldn't be too disappointed, and there's no need to suffer. After recognizing reality, you should think about the future. How could Qin Huaiyuan not be disappointed? He had been an official in the imperial court for many years. Even if he didn't make any contributions, he had always been cautious and conscientious, loyal, and devoted. But the emperor had persecuted his family time and time again without considering his feelings. First, he destroyed his in-laws, then he put his wife on the execution ground. He didn't care about his wishes and forced a woman to be his concubine. Now, he even wanted to capture his only bloodline and eat her. It was difficult for him to have children, and he only had this one daughter. The emperor didn't even consider his benefits and was actually so vicious. Last night, Qin Huaiyuan tossed and turned, unable to sleep. First, he was glad that his daughter was smart and reacted appropriately. Then, he deeply felt self-pity and sighed. Even if there was a saying, if the emperor wants a subject to die, the subject has no choice but to die, he still despaired of the emperor's fatuity. He even felt that perhaps if the emperor had been changed, the dying country's fortune would have been better. The common people wouldn't have been exploited to the point of starvation and suffering. However, Qin Huaiyuan didn't expect that after his daughter was almost captured and eaten, not only did she not complain about his incompetence as a father, she even comforted him. That feeling of being understood and accepted was something that Qin Huaiyuan didn't even get from his own mother. Qin Huaiyuan's eyes were somewhat hot. He raised his head and looked into the distance with his hands behind his back. After a while, Qin Huaiyuan said, "Your third cousin's sister is going to get married in a month. You're also going to be of marriageable age in 2 months. It's also time to discuss marriage. Yesterday, His Highness the Crown Prince came to find me. I don't want to wrong you, so I wanted to ask for your opinion." Chapter 173. Qin Yining never thought that her father would ask her such a question in person. She was an unmarried girl, so her face was red from embarrassment when she discussed this topic with her father. When Qin Huayuan saw Qin Yining's bashfulness, he smiled and said, "You're a big girl now, and our family situation is special. Moreover, your mother's temperament is not suitable for her to participate in the matters of the imperial court. However, your marriage cannot be separated from the matters of the imperial court. With my current status and you're my only daughter, your marriage, as your father, I have to make the decision for you." "Yes, daughter will listen to father's arrangements." Qin Yining nodded obediently. Qin Huayuan smiled and said, "Then if father wants you to be the crown prince's consort, are you willing?" When Qin Yining heard this, her heart skipped a beat. She didn't know why she felt sad, but she still nodded. "As long as father feels that my marriage is suitable, daughter will naturally listen to father." Since ancient times, marriage had been decided by the parents. She couldn't abandon her family in order to pursue her own happiness. Normally, she enjoyed the benefits of her family, but at this critical moment, she wasn't willing to do anything for her family. What kind of person would that make her? Qin Huayuan had the thought of teasing her. He glanced at her expression and said, "Your Highness the Crown Prince is a magnanimous and amiable person. Although you don't have much talent in politics, you're good enough to be a conservative ruler. He's also wholeheartedly devoted to you. When he found out that the Emperor and Empress wanted to kill you, he immediately rushed over to inform you. I think he's also sincere to you." Qin Yining gently pursed her lips and nodded. "Father is right. His Highness the Crown Prince does have his good points, but as a conservative ruler, his success is too trashy. Daughter will say something disrespectful and offensive. Now that the world is in chaos, the peaceful days of the Dayan are temporary. Even if there are no external enemies, the corruption in the imperial court must be dealt with and the common people must be saved. But His Majesty himself is greedy for pleasure and doesn't care about the people's livelihood. In my opinion, if we want to count on His Majesty to work hard for the country, it would be better to count on him to leave the country as soon as possible. And with the Crown Prince's talent, I'm afraid that he won't be able to hold on to such a huge mess in his hands. Moreover, there are still Tayton and Dezhou eyeing him covetously. In your daughter's humble opinion, it's best for our family to make early plans and think of a way out. Even if his father didn't care about sacrificing his life for the country, he still had to consider old Madam and the rest. The bloody lesson of Ding General Manor is right in front of us. Even if we're not afraid of death, we can't die for such a muddle-headed and incompetent person. Therefore, I don't recommend getting involved with the royal family." Qin Huayuan had long known that Qin Yining was quick-witted and clear-headed. He was often able to discern the overall situation from small details, and he was also very accurate in his criticism of the current situation. But now that he heard his daughter say it so bluntly in front of him, his feelings were naturally different. Although her words were disrespectful to the royal family, Qin Huayuan couldn't help but admit that Qin Yining was right. He felt this kind of feeling almost all the time when he was in the imperial court. He also wanted to turn the tide and push the crown prince to the throne. He wanted to rectify Dayan's unhealthy tendencies. Unfortunately, the crown prince's talent was in calligraphy and painting, not in politics. "You little girl, your father is talking to you about your marriage, but you're using your relationship with the imperial court to deny the crown prince." Qin Yining's face reddened, and she said with a smile, "Your daughter isn't speaking nonsense. Since your daughter's marriage can be decided by the imperial court, why can't it be denied by the imperial court? Father is a member of the imperial court, so your daughter naturally has to be involved. These are all things that have to be considered. So you're saying that in your heart, you're more inclined towards Prince Zhongshuan?" Qin Huayuan asked curiously. Qin Yining was stunned by the question. After a moment, she said, "Father, it's more important for your daughter to reject the crown prince's marriage. As for the rest, it's better to take one step at a time." Qin Huayuan heard the zither music and knew what she was thinking. He laughed, "You're so clever. It's obvious that you don't like the crown prince, and you don't want your father to arrange your marriage to someone else. That's why you said to take one step at a time. Qin Yining's face reddened even more. She really didn't want to admit that she was somewhat moved by Pang Xiao. But when her real father put her marriage on the agenda, she couldn't help but compare Pang Xiao to those people. She always felt that the crown prince's talent was slightly inferior to Pang Xiao's. There was no need to talk about the other nobles. She didn't even look at them properly. But even so, she still had to accept reality. Don't worry. Qin Huaiyuan put away his joking expression and said, "Do you think that those officials in the court would dare to come and beg you for their family's children?" "Father, what do you mean?" Qin Yining didn't react for a moment. Qin Huaiyuan laughed, "That's why you can't see it clearly, because you're in the picture. Think about it. When we were negotiating for peace, Prince Zhongshuan took a liking to you. As soon as we returned to the capital, the news was spread all over the city. And Prince Zhongshuan has never concealed his love for you. When he saved your mother, he announced that the rumors were true. In order to please you, he sent you to Ning Garden, suppressing the Empress limelight. The other 7 noble families saw it with their own eyes. Even when they encountered Titan assassins, he didn't care about anyone else. He even pulled you onto his horse and escaped with you. Pang Zhishi is a brave and scheming person. From the beginning, he has been planning step by step. He set up this trap long ago and was just waiting for you to walk into it. Now that the trap has been set, you've already been marked with his mark. If anyone else wants to marry you or touch you, they'll probably face his thunderous wrath. And he's already had a bad reputation. Who would dare to have any thoughts about you? As for those families of equal social status to our family, when they saw how special Pang Zhishi treated you that day in Ning Garden, who would come to marry you?" When Qin Yining heard this, she was so embarrassed that her face and ears turned red. Not only her cheeks, but even her ears and neck were completely red. "So father already had this idea long ago. You were just teasing me from the beginning." She angrily turned her face away and refused to look at Qin Huaiyuan. Qin Huaiyuan was amused by Qin Yining's girlish appearance and laughed heartily. "Life is too boring. There needs to be some entertainment. Father is really something. You're treating your own daughter as entertainment." Qin Yining angrily glared at Qin Huaiyuan. When Qin Huaiyuan saw her like this, he laughed and shook his head. When Qin Yining saw her father like this, she couldn't help but laugh. In that case, she couldn't separate herself from Pang Xiao for the rest of her life. With this realization, not only did she not feel angry, she even felt a bit happy. She touched the red bean bracelet on her wrist. The slightly cold touch reminded her of the night Pang Xiao left. She couldn't help but smile. At the same time, in the Dezhou military camp outside of Liang City, Pang Xiao flipped the table in front of him in anger after reading the note. Bang! The loud sound shocked Jing Pei and Huzi. Pang Xiao wasn't a person who showed his emotions on his face unless he wanted to deliberately show them to others. The rest of the time, especially in private, he was a calm and even indifferent person. Jing Pei and Huzi couldn't help but be surprised that news brought by a carrier pigeon could make him so angry.